Armored train in the apocalypse. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction. So don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 26 Hard Currency. He stopped and turned around, his cold eyes scrutinizing Huan. Reward? The dining car is preparing breakfast. How about a hot breakfast? Huan said. He's lips twitched, revealing a slightly mocking smile, and he turned to leave. Huan's tasks were never easy to complete. He thought he'd risk his life for a breakfast? Did he really think he was a slave? There's steak, pasta, and grilled sausages. If you don't like those, there are steamed buns, porridge, and freshly squeezed soy milk. Huan rattled off the menu from behind. He didn't even turn his head. He stepped into the muddy water, frowned at the people lying on the ground, and called out to Huan in the car, "Just check their condition and get them into the carriage, okay? Yes, and if you capture them perfectly alive, we'll even give you a glass of wine for dinner," Huan said with a smile. He took a deep breath of the damp air, picked up the steel bar, and walked towards the people on the ground. The person on the outermost edge was a familiar face. It was that burly, big-breasted dog brother. Trash, a dark glint flashed in He's eyes. He slammed the steel bar in his hand directly into Dog Brother's thigh with a dull thud. Dog Brother instantly curled up like a shrimp, his hands clenching his knees, his mouth agape in a silent roar. No threat. He picked up the rope Huan had thrown down, bound Dog Brother up like a dead pig, and tossed him onto the carriage. Huan took the rope, checked the knots, and then stuffed some rags into Dog Brother's mouth. He continued to smash them one by one. Whether they were truly unconscious or feigning it, he just hit them with a stick. Each dull thud carried the sound of bones breaking. As the grating sound grew closer, the guy lying on the ground, with his slanted eyes, felt a surge of resentment. He had been planning to feign unconsciousness to retaliate, but that bastard had shocked him 4 more times. His head was practically smoking. If it weren't for his astonishingly strong physique after becoming an evolved human, he would have been lying there like the others. He lay there for a long time, recovering his senses. This time, he admitted defeat and planned to wait for Huan to come and demand his surrender, but instead of Huan, a fierce-looking man appeared. Was he going to kill them all? The man with the slanted eyes dared not stand up, listening to the footsteps getting closer and closer, like a death knell. The man with the slanted eyes roared, pulling his face out of the mud and suddenly hugging his legs. This feeling, the creator, what a waste. Huan immediately understood the man with the slanted eyes background and felt a little regretful. What he needed most in his vehicle right now was a creator, but unfortunately, this one couldn't be used. Capture this one alive first. Hearing Huan's voice, He's raised steel bar froze. He frowned, his muscles tensed, and with a jolt, he pushed the man's hands away. He kicked the man with the slanted eyes in the chest. The man rolled away like a gourd, sitting there panting heavily. He didn't chase after him. He looked down and pulled up his trouser leg, seeing many red spots on his skin. "Don't worry, it'll go away in a couple of days, it's even weaker than a skin disease." Huan's calm voice came from the carriage. His universal energy perception allowed him to sense the universal energy fluctuations within an object, but he couldn't determine the other party's profession. For example, He becoming an evolved being was as obvious as a lantern to him. It was crystal clear, impossible to hide. Today, he was just taking the opportunity to gauge the other party's evolutionary direction and speed, to have a general idea. It would be a big mess if the shepherd got knocked over by a sheep. Bang! He tied up the slanted eyes and threw them onto the carriage. Remembered to bring food. Then he limped onto the carriage from the back. Huan looked down at the disheveled slanted eyes at his feet, put his hand on Huan's shoulder, and kept him away. If you were to ask which type of evolved being was the most powerful in the apocalypse, the answers would likely vary. But if you were to ask which type was the most bizarre, then the creators would definitely be the first choice. Because of their core skill, universal energy erosion, These people could change the properties of matter and trigger new changes, making them the first to cross the taboo. The red spots on Gao Zieqi's legs were caused by the omnipotent energy erosion, but since the other party was also an evolved being, and the strongest defender at that, he could withstand it for 2 days and it would pass. But Lian Quan was just an ordinary person, and if he were eroded by the other party, it would be much more troublesome. Perhaps on the first day it would just be a red spot, on the second day an eye would grow, and on the third day he could speak. "Don't kill me, I surrender, I still have enough food to last half a year in my water plant, clean water, a car, a lot of gasoline, and women, lots of women, as long as you let me go, they are all yours." The man with the slanted eyes spat out a mouthful of mud and said hurriedly. Su Huan seemed not to hear him. A layer of red light appeared on his hand. He pulled out a pistol from the man's waistband, removed the magazine. There were still 8 9mm bullets inside, bright yellow, extremely beautiful. This was a good thing, even a few years later when various evolved creatures roamed. The unique smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Moreover, it was sturdy and durable, much more reliable than the omnipotent firearms developed by those big companies, a hard currency in the apocalypse, a good partner for survival. Click. After a quick check, Su Huan cocked the gun again and brandished it against the man's head. The man's eyes bulged in fear, and his lips trembled. "No, no, don't kill me. Where did you get this?" Su Huan asked curiously. "I found it at the law enforcement station." Su Huan turned the gun over and indeed saw a worn-out mark. "Do you have any bullets left?" "There are some at the water plant, 60 rounds." "Does the water plant have any water purifiers?" The man paused for a moment, then nodded quickly and said, "Yes, yes, yes, big and small." Su Huan smiled. It seemed he didn't need to resort to any tricks. Pointing to the 16 surviving people in the carriage, he said, "I'll give you a chance to live. Choose 2 of the most loyal people from these people, and I'll let them go back. Take a small, integrated water purifier and send it to me, and you'll live." The man's eyes lit up immediately. "Okay, I'll definitely get it done for you. What's your name?" Su Huan suddenly asked. "Huan, you can just call me Little Hu," Huan said with a fawning smile, his eyes practically drooping. "Huan." A flicker of surprise crossed Su Huan's eyes. He hadn't expected to actually run into someone he knew. In his previous life, only 3 caravans had escaped from the high-temperature zone. This one was the third in command of the Mojiang Mutual Aid Caravan, the largest of them, with several thousand members. However, he'd heard the management was chaotic, so he hadn't gone. There weren't many strong individuals, but the number of evolved humans was generally higher than the other 2 caravans. If they needed labor, they might be able to approach them. But with him around in this life, whether this caravan could even be assembled was another question. What Su Huan was truly interested in was the other caravan, the Industry Agriculture Medical Joint Caravan. Chapter 27 New Evolvers. A convoy comprised of students and teachers from several universities had gathered a large number of highly qualified personnel. Of course, they should be huddled on campus for now, only beginning their escape when the temperature spiked. If they could consume these people beforehand, many technical problems could be solved. If asked what the most precious thing in the apocalypse is, some might say food, others industrial products, but in reality, it's the talent cultivated by the pre-apocalyptic education system. This is truly irreplaceable. Every death diminishes its value. In the previous life, these top-tier research talents were mostly held by various powerful forces, rarely being deployed elsewhere. If Su Huan wanted the armed train to become independent, he needed his own reserve of research talent. Otherwise, once the initial advantage was exhausted, the gap would only widen gradually. The atmosphere inside carriage number 2 was somewhat oppressive, accentuated by the surrounding tools. Huan finally selected 2 trusted confidants with intact limbs from among the crippled before turning to Su Huan. "Just these 2. Su Huan nodded, glancing at Yu and the others. "Yu Jing, go get the little things from the table in my room. The rest of you, go back." Guessing that Su Huan might be up to something unkind, Huan Xing quickly pushed Qi Zioba back to her room. Yu naturally went to prepare breakfast, leaving only Lian Quan behind. Su Huan looked at the 2 lucky chosen men, both tall and strong, about his height. He gave them a satisfied look, poking them with his fingers. It was like a butcher examining pigs on a chopping board, deciding where to cut them. The 2 men were horrified by his poking. Su Huan thought for a moment and ordered, Liang Quan, take their pants off. Upon hearing this, every living creature in the carriage instinctively clamped their legs together. Even Huan looked at Su Huan with genuine fear. Liang Quan hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and ripped off both men's pants, down to their ankles. The two men, their hands bound and mouths gagged with rags, their faces contorted in pain, were whimpering incoherently, their eyes filled with a mixture of pleading and fear as they looked at Su Huan. Su Huan stroked his chin and gave Liang Quan a look. Have them bend over. This time, even Liang Quan's gaze towards Su Huan was somewhat complicated, but he still turned the two men around, pressing them against the table with their backs to Su Huan. The two men were completely helpless in Liang Quan's hands, like little chicks. Huan silently turned his head away, refusing to look at the pleading eyes of his two trusted men. Yujing had just walked over when she saw this shocking scene. Her phoenix eyes narrowed slightly as she glanced at Su Huan and Liang Quan, revealing an understanding look. She held up a cylindrical object in her hand and asked, "Is this it?" "Yes, that's it." Su Huan's eyes gleamed slightly. Everyone watched as he adjusted what looked like a remote control a few times, then looked around before coming to the car window, opening it, and knocking a few times. A series of howls erupted. "Are they going to feed us to the zombies?" The people lying on the ground shuddered. The two lying on the table, their buttocks bare, were even more terrified, one of them even crying out in pain. Seeing the zombies approaching outside the train, Su Huan threw the cylindrical object in his hand and pressed the remote control with his right hand. The cylinder traced a beautiful parabola and landed perfectly in the zombie's chest pocket. Bang! Smack! The zombie's upper body was instantly smashed apart by a miniature explosion, and bits of flesh splattered against the train's armor. Su Huan nodded in satisfaction. His skills hadn't deteriorated, and tossed the remaining two cylinders to Liang Quan. "All right, stuff these two into their butts." The people lying on the ground immediately felt a tightness in their anuses, and even began to feel fortunate that they hadn't been chosen because of their missing limbs. If this thing exploded in their butts, wouldn't they die of pleasure on the spot? They ignored the wailing and howling from the other side. Yujing looked at Su Huan with suspicion in her eyes. "You can make bombs too?" "Just a small skill." Looking at the two burly men, their buttocks clenched and faces full of grievance, Su Huan proudly raised his chin. The steam rising from the high temperature, like thick, grayish-white cotton, clung to the rails. Suddenly, the lever of the switch, which was empty ahead, was moved by an inexplicable force, creaking and falling to the right. The armed train rolled over the water-drenched rails, and on both sides, rotting corpses lay prostrate in the mud, spiderweb-like red grass stems sprouting from their chests. Suddenly, a bluish-gray arm emerged from the mud. A zombie, half submerged in the swamp, struggled to raise its head, its turbid eyes mechanically rotating with the train's roar. Bang! A corpse was thrown down, smashing it to the ground. Su Huan wiped the sweat from his brow, closed the door, and looked at Huan, whose face was pale, patting him on the shoulder with a smile. "In 2 months, the weeds along these tracks will grow lush and green. They'll be so red and beautiful." Huan stared at Su Huan's pale fingers, his face trembling. He watched as Su Huan used his reddened fingers to poke a bloody hole between the foreheads of his men. Then, as the train moved on, they were thrown outside one by one. Yujing walked over, smelling the aroma of burned pig's trotters in the air, and frowned slightly. Gozhe has already left with those two men, and the forklift has gone too. Tell Liang Quan to drive slowly, they'll be moving the water purifiers for a while. Su Huan first hung Huan on the wall, then washed his hands. "Okay, there's something I need to report to you," Yujing said. Su Huan raised an eyebrow in surprise. This was the first time they had proactively asked to report. "What is it?" Yujing glanced at Huan hanging on the wall, who immediately pretended to be dead and closed his eyes. Su Huan understood, and the two went to the dining car. The previously scattered tables had merged in the middle, becoming a large, long rectangular table. Now, besides the decorative plants, there were several ferocious claws on it. Next to it was a broken glass. Wanzing, Kizioba, and Yu were all sitting at the table, their faces still showing lingering surprise. "What's wrong?" Su Huan asked curiously, subconsciously activating his universal senses. Two fluctuating universal energy immediately attracted his attention. One was the claws on the table. Needless to say, that was naturally material taken from the night demon. The other was actually Yu Yu sitting next to him. Su Huan looked at Aunt Yu in surprise. Aunt Yu must have washed and dressed today. Her soft, long hair was tied up in a bun at the back of her head, and she was wearing a ginger yellow long-sleeved shirt with rounded shoulders, the oversized shirt seemingly hanging on her shoulders. She didn't look like a woman who had given birth, she looked more like a girl in her early 20s. Seeing Su Huan approach, she quickly stood up, bowed her head, and greeted him, "Brother Su. You've successfully evolved? P.S. New author, please add to your favorites, follow, and vote with monthly tickets. Thank you all." Su Huan, some people say I'm bisexual? Pshwa, disgusting. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Twists and Turns. Yu Yu nodded subtly. After absorbing the universal energy crystal yesterday, I took a nap, and this morning I became an evolved being. My core ability is sound wave affinity, which allows me to hear many strange sounds. And you're even a manipulator. Su Huan was genuinely surprised. He had assumed Lion Quan or Yu Jing would be the first to evolve, but it turned out that the timid Aunt Yu was ahead of the curve. Su Huan walked around the tables and chairs to Yu Yu's side and looked at her ears. Becoming an evolved being inevitably brings some physical changes. Like the iron-colored eyes of Kizil Oba, or the gleaming light in Wan Xing's eyes. Su Huan's were even more obvious, glowing red and flashing with light. Yu Yu's ears had become longer and more elongated, with a clear cartilage outline. While not as exaggerated as elf ears, they were still quite delicate. Thanks to this evolution, the fine wrinkles around her eyes had disappeared, and her skin had become a shade lighter. Although these were minor adjustments that came with evolution, together they made her look more than 10 years younger. As if sensing Su Huan's gaze, Yu Yu unconsciously smoothed her hair, her ear tips turning red. The range of sounds a normal person can hear is 20-20000 Hz, so you can hear many sounds we can't, but what these sounds mean, you'll have to observe for yourself. After all, we can't hear them. Su Huan explained, squinting as he looked Yu Yu up and down. The ability to hear special sound waves was just a secondary ability. Her main ability was likely the control over sound waves. Otherwise, this type wouldn't be called a manipulator. Anything else, I think I can gather some of the sounds I hear, and then I can also emit some high-pitched and low-frequency sounds myself. Su Huan picked up the glass shard on the table, then looked at Aunt Yu's even wider neck, slightly surprised. Did you make this? In his previous life, he had encountered someone who could hear various sound waves, but hearing and using them were quite different. The fine hairs on Yu Yu's ears stood on end, her thin, curved eyebrows furrowed, and her fingers twisted together like a child's. She was always very nervous in the face of Su Huan's gaze. She secretly glanced at her daughter sitting beside her, and her emotions eased somewhat. Su Huan's gaze was intrigued. It seems there's still quite a bit of aggression involved. How far can it go? Currently, the attack power is very weak. At most, it can cause tinnitus for a moment. Very good, Su Huan said with satisfaction. A complete team might not be a collection of many strong individuals, but rather a group of people with various skills working together. Firepower suppression, area control, long-range support, sensory tracking. By leveraging different specializations, they form a well-structured squad. However, when Su Huan was selecting people, he prioritized the armed train, with ease of control being a secondary consideration. As for the synergy of evolutionary abilities, it was like opening a blind box. He didn't expect Yu Yu and the others to have particularly suitable abilities. He hadn't expected to draw sonic manipulation ability, which was already considered a stroke of luck. Really? Yu Yu hadn't expected to hear the words very good from the demanding Su Huan. She raised her rounded chin and mustered her courage to ask, then what can I do? Su Huan looked at Yu Yu's soft lips. Lost in thought? High frequency, vibration, perhaps. You could be a sniper? Me? Yu Yu's eyebrows relaxed, and she happily placed her hands behind her back. Suddenly remembering that her daughter was with someone else, she quietly restrained her fidgeting. Seeing her mother beam with joy like a little girl after being praised a few times, Yu Jing sighed inwardly and asked, is it because sonic abilities are better suited for long-range combat? Su Huan turned his head and said seriously, yes, If she can control sonic waves, she can easily obtain battlefield information, such as terrain, enemy positions, etc. With a sniper rifle, she would be an important asset to the team. Yu Jing thought about her mother's personality. If she were to go to the battlefield with a knife, she would definitely be terrified and hide behind her. Being a long-range sniper would be quite good. Important and safe. Huh? Yu suddenly let out a soft exclamation. The others looked at her in confusion. Mom, what's wrong? Yu Jing went to her mother's side and took her hand. Yu tilted her head and said uncertainly, I heard 2 explosions, similar to the ones this morning. Su Huan and Yu Jing exchanged a glance and raised an eyebrow, asking, which direction? Yu pointed to the left side of the carriage. Su Huan's eyes instantly turned cold. That was the direction of the water plant, which Yu hadn't known about before. Su Huan narrowed his eyes. Zioba, go to the driver's cab and tell Lian Quan to speed up. Be careful of the road conditions. Wanzing, go to the reserve car. Yu Jing, you stay here. Tell me what your mother hears. After saying that, Su Huan walked towards the number 2 sightseeing car. He went up the stairs to the 2nd floor and looked out the window. Because it was morning, the mist outside the window had dissipated a lot. Although it was still cloudy, he could see things in the distance. Most of the buildings on both sides of the railway were low-rise buildings of 6 stories or less, surrounded by metal fences. There weren't many cars on the road, which looked like it had been cleared. There were also many punctured corpses, which must have been done by the people from Fangxing property. The glass was fogged up and a bit blurry, so Su Huan simply walked directly to the number 3 car through the back door. The hot and humid air rushed in and quickly soaked his gray t-shirt, making it stick to his body. Standing here, he could see the water tower under the gloomy sky in the distance. The train beneath their feet continued its journey. 10 minutes later, at 10:22, it finally came to a stop, and the water tower shifted from the left side of Su Huan's view to directly in front of him. It was only about a kilometer away. 42 minutes had passed since Gao Zhe set off with 4 workers and 2 trusted henchmen carrying explosives. It wasn't that he didn't want to send his own people. Lian Quan was the driver and couldn't easily get off the train. Qi Zioba was a strategic talent, and his legs were weak, so he couldn't get off either. As for the likes of Yu Jing and Wan Xing, it goes without saying. Sending them would be like throwing good money after bad. Even without risk, unexpected complications would arise. When the apocalypse tears away the constraints of civilization, women are also an important resource. Therefore, even when Gao Zhe repeatedly violated the rules, Su Huan didn't kill him. Because he needed such a powerful and distant henchman. Suddenly, Su Huan's pupils reflected a figure staggering back onto the train. Footsteps sounded behind him, and Lian Quan, carrying Huan, came up. Su Huan put his arm around one's shoulder, pointed to a figure in the distance, and asked with a faint smile, "What kind of news do you think he'll bring back?" Wan glanced at the man's work uniform, his heart sank, and he swallowed hard. "Brother Su, there might be some misunderstanding." The man saw Su Huan on the train and ran even faster, completely ignoring the mud on his legs. Reaching the bottom of the train, he shouted, panting heavily, "Boss Su, they killed the hostage." Chapter 29 Paranoia and Conspiracy. Su Huan repeated those words, one by one, with a playful look in his eyes. They killed the hostage. Huan's body trembled violently, large beads of sweat rolling down his face. "Brother Su, there must be some misunderstanding here. Those 2 people wanted to harm me. You chose them yourself." Su Huan smiled non-committally, turning to the workers below. "Did they refuse the deal?" The worker hesitated, then nodded emphatically. "Those 2 went up and said a few words, then tried to arrest us with the rest of the group, but Boss Gao used his superpower to blow them up instantly." "Impossible, they wouldn't dare." Huan quickly said. "Shut up." Su Huan's voice suddenly turned icy. Huan shivered, not daring to speak again. Su Huan narrowed his eyes and looked at the worker, asking, "You mean, those 2 came with them to capture you?" The worker hesitated for a moment. "Yes, and then Boss Gao started fighting with them. That's why I ran back in the chaos." "Boss Su, let's hurry and rescue Boss Gao." Su Huan smiled and patted Huan's cheek. "Looks like they really don't care whether you live or die." Before he could finish speaking, his red and index finger pierced Huan's temple. The man with bulging eyes fell headfirst, landing on the ground below the carriage. The worker quickly dodged, but was still splashed with mud. Su Huan said calmly, Liang Quan, take a team and clear out the zombies around the train. Liang Quan responded in a muffled voice, hesitated for a moment, and asked, are we still going to the water plant? Of course we'll go. Inside carriage number 9, a sprightly old man stood by the window and said confidently. Scarface touched the scar on his cheek and said strangely, Old kin, why are you talking in circles? Didn't you say that the guy surnamed Su wouldn't get off the train? And even if Starry Sky Property refused the deal, there's no reason for them to kill Boss Cow, right? Aren't there too many loopholes in this? The old man glanced at him, shook his head, and said, Su Huan is extremely suspicious, especially since the person he's facing is Gao Zhe. Even if you give him 100 plausible reasons, he won't believe them. On the contrary, if you give him a few pieces of information full of errors, he'll become suspicious. From the first day of the apocalypse, he decisively seized the train, then collected supplies and modified his weapons. This kind of mentality, this kind of decisiveness, would be called a hero in any era. And such people all have one weakness. Arrogance? Scarface asked thoughtfully. It's obsession. Old Kin took out a handkerchief from his pocket, carefully wiping the sweat from his beard, and said seriously, anyone with ability has their own obsessions. They won't give up easily. Once they make a plan, they must complete it. This is both their strength and their weakness. Since he went to such lengths to get the water purifier, he won't give up easily. Even if he knows Gao Zhe is waiting for him in the shadows. Scarface touched his chest, wiping away sweat, and said irritably, what if we just drag this out? Su Huan has food, drink, air conditioning, and beautiful women in the carriage, while Boss Gao is in the dangerous wilderness. It won't be long. Su Huan is more anxious than us. Look, he's already gone out. Old Kin's eyes flickered as he watched two figures suddenly pass by the car window. A worker in overalls walked behind, dragging a corpse, while a young man in a gray t-shirt and jeans walked in front. The worker followed nervously, cautiously observing Su Huan. He was afraid that if he attracted the zombies, the other party would abandon him and run away. Seeing the surrounding weeds growing thicker and thicker, almost obscuring the train, the worker couldn't help but ask, Boss Su, where are we going? Are we rescuing Boss Gao? Su Huan's gaze swept around, then suddenly settled on a patch of grass about a meter in diameter, a patch of green interspersed with several red vines. The vines had dark red veins resembling blood vessels, their surfaces covered with transparent barbs. At first glance, they looked somewhat like sea buckthorn, with a menacing, claw-like appearance. Throw the corpse you're carrying over there. The worker swallowed hard, dragged the corpse forward, then grabbed its leg and swung it violently, throwing his upper body into the grass. Unexpectedly, the previously still plant suddenly moved. The red branches, like sharp swords, suddenly stabbed towards the corpse. Thud! A branch pierced through the corpse, directly into the worker's arm. The worker immediately screamed, trying to run away, but his feet were somehow entangled in the branches, and he stumbled with each step. In just over 10 seconds, both his legs were tightly bound by the vines. As more vines crawled up like living things, the worker, tears streaming down his face, begged Su Huan for help. Su Huan looked at the worker entangled in the bloodthirsty vines, his eyes deep. You said those two came to capture you together? Yes, they attacked first. Boss Su, please save me. Please save me. The worker struggled frantically, dragged along by the vines. A red light emanated from Su Huan's hand, and the approaching vines hesitated for a moment, bypassing Su Huan and turning back to continue binding the worker. Branches pierced through the worker's body, revealing bloody thorns. Su Huan extended a finger and poked at the branch like a branding iron poking butter, carbonizing both the branch and flesh, creating a hole. The worker screamed again, wailing, I was wrong, Boss Su, I shouldn't have lied to you. Please forgive me this time. Su Huan calmly poked at the branches on his body, like playing whack-a-mole. Although the bloodthirsty vine's devouring power had been halted, the worker was already riddled with over a dozen holes, both deep and shallow. He was in excruciating pain. What are you lying to me about? They didn't attack us. Gao Zhe hadn't even entered the water plant. He used his powers to kill those two. The worker stammered. Su Huan narrowed his eyes. This worker probably didn't know about the hidden bomb in his buttocks and mistook it for Gao Zhe's power. As for why the worker cooperated with Gao Zhe, there could be many reasons. Either he was subdued inside the carriage, or he was threatened on the spot. Perhaps there were other details, but it was roughly what Su Huan guessed. Gao Zieqi's goal was only one, to lure him out of the carriage. Just as Su Huan was thinking, the bloodthirsty vine attacked again. The worker tried to beg for mercy, but a cluster of bright red, vein-like branches had already grown from his mouth. It made a few strange hoarse sounds and then fell silent. Its eyes lost their luster. The bloodthirsty vine, having absorbed the two corpses, grew even more vibrant and crimson. Within minutes, the branches intermittently produced a few fruits, each with a thin membrane covering a pool of blood. They looked crystal clear and exquisitely dewy. P.S. Data is poor, so I'll update 2 more chapters to encourage you to read. Chapter 30. You've hidden well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I almost forgot, Huan is still an evolved being. Su Huan counted as he carefully picked a few fruits. If the water purifier deal went smoothly, he wouldn't necessarily give Huan a way out. But the deal fell through, and he really couldn't find a reason to let Huan live. As for the water plants supplies and the beautiful women, he wasn't very interested. Only the benefits that were in his pocket mattered. Right now, the quickest thing he could get was Huan's flesh. Feeding it to the bloodthirsty vine would also encourage the production of more bloodthirsty fruits. After picking the fruits, Su Huan walked towards the train. Liang Quan was leading some passengers in a zombie clearing operation. They worked in groups of several, wielding long sticks and similar weapons, knocking down the zombies and then ganging up on them. These zombies, which weren't even at the first tier, posed no threat to organized humans unless they formed a large-scale zombie horde, and were even less of a threat than some large carnivores. Take all the zombie corpses to carriage number 2, Su Huan casually ordered as he passed by. Understood. Once on the bus, Su Huan looked around and found Huan Xing in the dining car. She was sitting on the sofa, holding a potted plant, her beautiful face calmly gazing out a window. The scene of people killing zombies outside the window was like a satirical oil painting, a fusion of civilization and savagery, death and hope. Yu was wiping bottles and jars in the kitchen. The occasional crisp clinking of the utensils brought a sense of daily life back to reality. Since Su Huan hadn't had time to cook, the dining car kitchen had become her domain. When Su Huan appeared, both of them instinctively turned their gaze to him, their expressions tensing. Su Huan went straight to Huan Xing, took out 5 bloodthirsty fruits, and asked, "Let's try extracting these today." Huan Xing sat up straight, curiously asking, "What are these?" "Bloodthirsty fruits. Fruits formed from the blood and flesh of the mutated plant. They can promote biological evolution, but they can't be eaten raw, it will cause a violent death." "Okay, I'll try it now." Huan Xing took the fruits, got up, and walked to carriage number 2. The originally prepared weapons carriage had now been converted into a garage and a large tool shed. The air still carried a faint smell of blood, and even with the air conditioning on full blast, the metallic stench couldn't be dispelled. "They'll bring over the zombie corpses later. You extract them too. Pay attention to anything other than the general energy crystals. Call me when you've successfully extracted them." After giving his instructions, Su Huan went straight to the second floor, still soaking wet, but now wasn't the time to worry about that. His gaze pierced through the glass and blast-proof netting, past a rows of buildings, and landed on the tall water tower. Thinking of Gao Zieqi hiding in some shadow waiting for him, Su Huan couldn't help but lick his lips. "You'd better hide well, don't show your face." He took out a Tier 1 polymorphic crystal from the night demon from his pocket and sat on the ground, quietly extracting its polymorphic energy. Inside the water plant, the outer walls of the storage tanks were covered in dark green moss, and broken pipes snaked across the ground in shadowy patterns. Gao Zieqi held a blood-dripping steel bar in one hand, tapping it on the metal stairs with intermittent, trembling sounds. The pressure on the guards inside was palpable. 3 men in security uniforms stared nervously at the iron door of the monitoring room when they suddenly sensed a slight noise behind them. "Who?" a tense guard shouted. Turning around, they saw only half a blood-stained steel bar flying towards them. Bang! The steel bar pierced his eye socket, pinning him to the wall. A large patch of crimson stained the area. The other 2 turned around and saw a one-armed figure in a hoodie leaping down from the window. With a single foot landing, like a tiger leaping, he crashed into their arms, the sickening sound of breaking bones echoing. Boom! Gao Zieqi slammed the 2 men against the wall, braced himself with one hand, twisted his strong waist, and stood up. He pulled a steel bar from the wall and swung it at the two guards who were groaning softly. After a crisp sound like a cucumber cracking, the room returned to silence. Only rustling sounds came from the bedroom. Gao Ziyi walked along the wall to the inner room, placed his hand on it, took a deep breath, and suddenly pushed it away. But he didn't make any further moves for a long time. His tall body was stiff, and his pupils were contracted to the extreme. A putrid smell of stewed meat wafted out of the room. The 30-square-meter space was filled with moldy food packaging bags. More than 20 women were tied up by their hands and hung from the ceiling, their toes barely touching the ground, constantly having to maintain their balance. 4 more people were hanging from the ceiling fan in the middle, forced to move as the fan turned. 2 of them were breathing heavily, their arms black and purple, being dragged around in circles, leaving bloody marks on the floor. Seeing Gao Ziyi enter, the women's eyes remained unmoved, silent as if they were mute. Even the armor-trained Gao Ziyi considered hellish was far inferior to this small 30-square-meter room. The people were like dried meat in a drying room, hanging naked. You. A rough, hoarse voice startled Gao Ziyi. He could hardly believe that the voice came from him. After a long pause, he quickly found the fan switch on the wall and turned it off. Then he went forward and carried the nearest woman down. Never mind, I'll save you first. He realized for the first time how inadequate his language was. He could only be quick and swift to minimize their suffering. Just as he carried everyone down, he heard a loud noise. Turning around in confusion, he saw a woman leap from the window. No, Gao Ziyi's heart skipped a beat. This was the 6th floor. Feeling the struggle in his arms, he quickly looked down. The woman crawled out of his arms, knelt on the ground, kowtowed 3 times to him, and then also crawled towards the window. Gao Ziyi reached out and grabbed her, gritting his teeth. There are trains and food outside. Come with me, and you can live. But the woman turned and opened her mouth, revealing an empty cavity. No tongue, not even teeth. The woman gave an extremely ugly smile, backed away, kowtowing, and finally crawled to the window, jumping down like the first woman. Gao Ziyi stiffly withdrew his hand, clenched his fist, and slammed it heavily on the ground, his teeth clenched, his face so dark it seemed to drip water. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of kowtowing echoed. After a long while, besides the several women who were already dead, only Gao Ziyi remained in the room. The sky finally cleared, and the dim sunlight streamed in through the window, cutting a bright yellow patch on the wall. Gao Ziyi slumped between light and shadow, his expression somber. I did something wrong. No, I didn't do anything wrong. Those who exploit and manipulate others deserve to die. Su Huan. Chapter 31. Down teammates, everyone has one. Crimson droplets, like flowing pomegranate juice, reflected the earnest eyes beneath the boy's tousled hair. Remember, once synthesized, you must encapsulate it within the bullet as quickly as possible. If you're too slow, we'll all die, Su Huan instructed, holding a 9mm brass bullet. Kizaoba gripped the armrests tightly and nodded. I'm ready. Su Huan gave Wan Xing a look. The latter took a deep breath and poured the juice collected from the bloodthirsty fruit into a glass bottle. Inside was a special gene fluid, collected from over a dozen zombies. It was similar to the material collected from the Night Demon. However, because the amount from each zombie was extremely small, it was easily overlooked. She wouldn't have bothered to gather this if Su Huan hadn't emphasized it. The 2 liquids mingled in the glass bottle. Hiss. The crimson liquid instantly changed color, a small black spot rapidly expanding as if contaminated. Is it a success? Wan Xing felt something was strange. The liquid in the glass bottle had a strong attraction for her. It was as if swallowing it would grant her some kind of evolution. Of course, it failed. Su Huan clenched his little finger, looking at the glass bottle with a hint of apprehension in his expression. Synthesizing gene potions isn't as simple as just putting a few ingredients together. It requires the expertise of a potion-related professional to control the process. Fine-tuning the proportions, the timing of fusion, and subtle changes in physical properties is crucial. Otherwise, the result will be like this: failure. The cost of failure can be high or low, but some failed products can have special effects. Like this drop of viscous, oil black liquid. Its full name is Evolution Beast Inducer. Because of its strong evolutionary deception, it's very useful for clearing out or attracting evolved beasts. But like many inventions, people don't use it for good. Flash party invitation, meal bell, Evolution beast quick summoning, doomsday happiness water, my damn teammates all have one. Soon, this simple potion became widespread, with almost everyone capable of exploration and scavenging possessing one. When everyone had it, it created a nuclear deterrent effect. Only by holding this thing could one avoid worrying about teammates betraying them at crucial moments. Squeeze it tight, pour it out in 3 seconds, Zioba, get ready, Huan reminded him nervously. A cold metallic glint appeared in Zioba's eyes, and the brass bullet on the table instantly floated in midair. The bullet had detached from the body and melted like ice cream, creating a narrow space inside the bullet head. Wanzing also dripped a black liquid in her hand at the right moment. When the liquid swirled at the mouth of the bottle, the attraction originating from genetic instincts reached its peak. Plop. The liquid dripped, and the brass bullet head quickly closed, stuffed back into the bullet, and fell into Huan's palm. That strange attraction also disappeared instantly. Looking at the brand new bullets in his hand, Huan smiled faintly. Done. Heavy footsteps came from the dining car. Liang Quan asked, I had a strange feeling just now. Huan stood up and patted his now much thicker shoulder. You were right, but we're late. Get ready. We'll drive in 10 minutes, but don't go directly into Mojiang City. Just stop at the border. Are we leaving? No. Huan licked his palate, a cold glint in his eyes. Tell Wang He to get ready. Take 20 men. Tonight we'll go and bring back the forklift and water purifier, 7:20 p.m., muggy and windless. Dark clouds, like cotton wool soaked in engine oil, pressed down on the horizon. The arc-shaped outline of the water tower in the distance gleamed iron gray in the twilight. Further away lay the tranquil Mojiang River. Clearly, the temperature of over 30 degrees Celsius had no noticeable effect on this great river. It continued to quietly nourish the land on both banks, just as it had before the apocalypse. But this river was the most dangerous place in the entire region, except for the city center. In Huan's mind, the depths of the river were even more terrifying than the city center. Highly densely packed evolved beasts fought and devoured each other in the dark depths, their evolution unpredictable, their extent unknown, and the sheer number of terrifying creatures lurking within. There were simply too many unknowns. Therefore, even 4 years after the apocalypse, no one dared approach these water sources. Tap tap. Huan stepped on the heavy steel roof plate, calming his mind. Although he didn't currently intend to build a combat platform, he had deliberately made the roof flatter. This would make it easier to add a layer later, serving as a passageway connecting the rear carriages, or to install mechanical arms, machine guns, and other weapons. He raised his wrist and checked his watch. 1924, about a minute left. Huan pulled out the captured pistol, unloaded, checked, and reloaded. He fired a shot towards the ground, hearing the familiar crisp sound, and confirming there were no problems, he loaded the special bullet into the magazine. A slight vibration came from the train beneath his feet. Huan raised the pistol, tilted it 45 degrees towards the sky above the water plant, and pulled the trigger. With a thud, a bullet with an initial velocity of 400 meters per second emerged from the barrel, its momentum dissipating at its peak before it began to fall. Its point of impact was also its maximum range, the waterworks, exactly 1 kilometer away. Suddenly, countless heavy breathing sounds echoed through the quiet suburbs, accompanied by menacing growls. Whirlpools appeared on the still river, surging with dark red, murky blood, the terrifying sound of scales scraping against each other churning beneath the surface. The riverside weeds drooped, their rustling sounds coalescing into a torrent. This torrent pointed directly at the waterworks on the bank. At that moment, Gao Zhe sat in his room, chewing instant noodles, the crunching sound rough and grating. Beside him lay a man, his skull shattered, the last man at the waterworks. He had spent an entire afternoon doing something meaningless, killing everyone at the waterworks. Except for the women. They had committed suicide. He killed 44 people, becoming numb by the end. He couldn't even distinguish whether his actions were driven by anger or lingering pity, he simply smashed their skulls out of habit. Suddenly, the chewing stopped. Gao Zhe felt an immense pressure envelop him, instinctive fear, like a giant hand, clenched tightly around his heart. He threw down the half-eaten packet of instant noodles, smoothed the hairs standing on end on his neck, picked up the steel bar, and went to the window. He cautiously peered outside. The sky was dark and gloomy, but even in the dim light, he could make out the buildings. But for some reason, he felt that a terrifying presence was watching him from every shadow. Chapter 32 White Snake in the Desert. Meanwhile, the culprit had already put away his pistol. Back in the dining car, Su Huan first ripped off his sticky t-shirt, grabbed some deodorizer, sprayed it haphazardly on himself, and then tossed it to Yu Jing beside him. All of you take the deodorizer and spray all the windows, doors, and any gaps in the train. A hint of doubt flashed in Yu Jing's eyes. Only the front carriages? What about the back? Take a box of deodorizer over there and give it to Wang He. Oh, and have your mother go up to the second floor of the sightseeing carriage and keep an eye on things. Su Huan said, narrowing his eyes. Soon, except for Lian Quan and Xiaoba who were driving, the three women were all up and about, busy spraying deodorizer in each carriage. A minute later, the lights went out, and the roars of the beasts outside became even more terrifying. Su Huan planned to go up to the second floor to check, and as soon as he went up, he saw a figure standing there, holding deodorizer in his hand, with a sense of helpless bewilderment. As they drew closer, Su Huan caught a faint scent of roasted chestnuts emanating from Yu. What happened? He asked, puzzled. The woman's face was pale, and the moonlight streaming through the car window gave her a somewhat melancholic beauty. Yu's full lips trembled. I heard a lot of terrifying sounds. Su Huan suddenly understood. He was already used to this oppressive feeling. He had experienced many such encounters in his past life, even face-to-face with evolved beasts. Moreover, as the train pulled away, the instinctive tremor in his heart gradually subsided. To him, the sounds were just a jumbled cacophony, nothing terrifying. But for Yu, who could control sound waves, those sounds might have created the illusion of being right next to her. Su Huan removed the deodorant from her hand, his voice calm and soothing. What did you hear? The young man, shirtless, his muscular body glistening with sweat, exuded a hormonal heat that momentarily distracted her. Hearing his question, Yu subconsciously recalled those sounds, her eyes widening in terror again. I heard the sounds of arthropods crawling, bones breaking, flesh tearing, and waves crashing, like something terrifying was crawling ashore. Suddenly, her trembling ears were enveloped by a warm hand, and Yu froze, stunned. Remember, those things are far away from you, and you're on a safe train. The train is still moving, and those dangers will only get further away. Su Huan slightly raised his hand, ensuring his voice was steady and clear to Yu. Looking at the young man before her, Yu saw that although his face remained cold and his voice was calm, she felt he had softened considerably. At least, that's how she felt now. Su Huan's hands shielded her from the terrifying sounds, and she was also affected by his calm demeanor. Only then did she realize she was almost pulled into his embrace. A blush quickly spread across her skin. She stood frozen, bewildered. I'll slowly raise my hands. Don't listen to sounds from too far away. Try to control the dispersion of your energy and don't subconsciously listen. Su Huan raised his hands and casually placed them on her shoulders. The woman's evolved figure was increasingly voluptuous and firm, though it was mostly concealed by her loose clothing. Just by resting his hands on her, he could feel her delicate skin and warm, slender collarbones through her clothes. At this moment, she was bowing her head in front of him, the downy hair on the back of her neck trembling slightly in the air conditioning, like some kind of bird waiting to have its feathers stroked. It's much better. Realizing that she was being comforted in the arms of a young man about the same age as her daughter, Yu felt extremely ashamed and dared not look him in the eye. Su Huan breathed a sigh of relief when he sensed that she was less nervous. Evolved beings are not so stable. Each evolution is equivalent to compressing hundreds of thousands of years of iteration into an instant, like building a pyramid, and no one knows if it will collapse next. And a stable emotional state also plays a part. Feeling the hands on her shoulders being removed, Yu felt a sense of emptiness. She cautiously raised her head, only to find Su Huan's gaze fixed on her back. Instinctively, she tried to follow his gaze, but he grabbed her waist and pulled her back into his arms with such force that she almost cried. Don't turn around. Su Huan's voice was terrifyingly heavy. The next moment, she felt the gaze of that terrifying presence, her body stiffening on the spot. Following Su Huan's earlier instructions, she limited her abilities to an extremely narrow range. Thump thump. Feeling the skin pressed against her and her strong heartbeat, she finally calmed down and whispered, "What is that?" Su Huan's hand tightened around the curve of her lower back, his voice low. "It's a white evolved beast, very large." "A snake?" "Yes." Su Huan swallowed, staring intently at the scene before him. Under the clear moonlight, a gigantic, pure white serpent coiled atop the water tower, its head, nearly half a story high, held aloft. Its cold, vertical blue pupils slowly contracted, focused on the train's direction. Its whip-like tail unconsciously lashed the tower, sending large chunks of concrete debris crashing down. As the train moved further away, the chilling, eerie light receded, and Su Huan's tense muscles finally relaxed. It seemed his past life's experience was still effective in the early stages of the apocalypse. Evolved beasts wouldn't stray too far from their territory to hunt prey in cities or among zombie hordes. However, the appearance of the white serpent still made him uneasy. He had heard of this serpent in his past life. Because it originated from Mojiang, it was also known as Mojiang or white serpent Mojiang by survivors. This serpent was discovered in the third year of the apocalypse after devouring a fourth-tier zombie. Unexpectedly, a lure had drawn it out. This was something Su Huan had never anticipated. After all, Mojiang spanned 3 provinces. Who knew it would be right next to Mojiang City? Fortunately, he ran fast. The woman in his arms let out a soft moan, slightly pained. Su Huan then came to his senses, suddenly remembering something, and quickly let go, looking down. He had pinched a large bruise on the woman's plump waist and hips. The woman pursed her lips, her eyes moist with grievance. Su Huan felt somewhat embarrassed, but he couldn't bring himself to apologize. He tugged at the woman's jeans, startling Yu, who quickly pulled her pants tighter, her eyes filled with panic. However, Su Huan didn't do anything, simply exposing her bruised skin. He shook his hand, then covered the surface. The icy touch made Yu gasp in surprise. Shaking it a couple of times certainly wouldn't have cooled it down as quickly. Besides, the carriage wasn't cold. It had maintained a temperature of around 23 degrees Celsius. Chapter 33 Short-Term Mission Package. It must be because of his special ability. But this position was really a little embarrassing, and Yu couldn't help but try to be more natural, slowly taking her hand off her pants. Suddenly, she felt a slight coolness slide down her waist. Startled, she placed her hand on the young man's strong forearm. Eek! With the danger gone, Su Huan felt much more relaxed and couldn't resist easing her. His tone was casual. An ice pack will help you heal faster. Your clothes are covering it, pull them up a bit. Oh, okay. Yu realized she had overthought things, feeling conflicted and embarrassed. She grabbed the corner of her ginger yellow clothes and pulled them up a little, inwardly sighing, I already have a daughter, why am I still so hesitant about such a small thing? The belt is too tight, loosen it a little. Su Huan tugged at her pants, her full hips were caught on her jeans, leaving no room for anything. Because she had misunderstood Su Huan before, she hesitated for a moment but still loosened the belt a little. Looking at the obedient woman, Su Huan's lips curled into a smile. A cold hand lifted, leaving only the index finger touching the skin, moving up the smooth skin a dozen centimeters down the side of her waist. The tingling and icy sensation from her nerve endings made Yu bite her lower lip involuntarily. She sensed something was wrong, but Su Huan's finger stopped just before reaching the forbidden zone. If it had gone even a fraction higher, even just a centimeter, she would have stopped immediately. But now, he was kindly helping her with an ice pack to reduce the swelling, and she was being paranoid. What was there to hesitate about? Be brave. Yu thought in a daze, completely forgetting whose hand had scratched her waist. The cold fingertip lingered for only a moment before the entire hand lay down horizontally, moving up a little further. Hiss, Yu gasped. Was it this spot? Maybe a little lower. But the conflicted woman wasn't sure. The sensations of cold and pain could sometimes be mixed up. Su Huan looked down at this clumsy Aunt Yu, a strange smile playing on his lips. His palm slid downwards. Aunt Yu was not only timid, but also surprisingly plump, unlike the women in the apocalypse who always had sharp edges, either calluses on their shoulders and elbows, or overly prominent hip bones due to hunger. The pores gradually contracted under the cold stimulation, making her skin even smoother, like fine satin. His palm traced her soft waist, slightly past her hips, stopping at the upper part of her buttocks, without crossing any boundaries. But the sensation here was already rich enough. To make the bruises fade faster, Su Huan repeated this 4 or 5 times, expanding the area slightly each time for better treatment results. Mom, are you still up there? Her daughter's voice suddenly rang out. Yu was startled, suddenly realizing that her waistline and half of her plump buttocks were exposed. Her cheeks flushed red, and she quickly put down her clothes, taking a step back to distance herself from Su Huan. I should have expanded my listening range to this carriage, she secretly regretted. The sweet aroma of roasted chestnuts lingering around his nose suddenly faded away. Su Huan snapped out of his daze, composed himself, and put on his habitual fake smile again. Yu glanced up at his aloof eyes, and a ripple of sadness inexplicably welled up in her heart. It's so dark up there. I can't see you clearly, Yu Jing said softly. A very scary serpentine evolved beast was chasing us, but it couldn't catch up and left, Yu said with a flash of inspiration. It's good that it didn't catch up. Yu Jing walked over. Su Huan squinted at Yu Jing's clear eyes, then looked back at Yu, who was visibly relieved, and chuckled inwardly. He was clearly clumsy, yet he always had to put on a calm facade in front of his daughter. He looked up at his watch and saw that half an hour had passed. Looking up at Yu Jing, Su Huan said, "Tell Lion Quan to stop running and prepare to reverse. Tell Wang and the others to get ready, we'll set off together in a bit." Yu Jing raised an eyebrow. Aren't there evolved beasts chasing us? They are, after all, evolved beasts from the water. Although some can go ashore because of evolution, they are more accustomed to the aquatic environment. They'll go back once the inducing agent scent dissipates, Su Huan explained simply. After about 50 minutes, the train finally reversed back to a position about 1 kilometer from the water plant. Reversing took much longer than moving forward. Su Huan planned to install another locomotive at the platform next time, specifically for reversing. That would make escaping easier. Perhaps he could broaden his thinking and add a power car every 3 to 5 or 6 to 7 carriages. Distribute the power layout. This would double the load-bearing capacity of the entire armed train, and the armor thickness could also be doubled. 30 millimeters of steel armor. Just thinking about it made him feel incredibly safe. Just as Su Huan was lost in thought, the group had already gathered in carriage number 2. Looking up at everyone, Su Huan calmly said, "The inducing agent will dissipate in about half an hour, while the scent of high-level evolved beasts will linger for about 3 hours. An hour and a half has already passed, leaving us with only an hour and a half. That means if we go now, we'll only encounter some remaining evolved beasts and a few scattered zombies. I'll only say this once, for all outings, no matter how hot it is, wear a jacket. No large areas of skin should be exposed, and the jacket and inner shirt must be separate. The rest is just following orders. Don't panic, and don't act rashly." As he said the last sentence, Su Huan's gaze was fixed on Yu. Seeing her nod, he continued, "This mission is to transport water purifiers. The personnel configuration is as follows: Qizile Oba, Yu Jing, and Wan Xing will stay on the train, Liang Quan, Yu, and I will carry out the mission. Yu will be responsible for detection and reconnaissance, and Liang Quan will be responsible for defense and support. Any questions?" Hearing Su Huan's clear and organized arrangements, everyone shook their heads. "Zioba, you're in charge of guarding the storage compartment. Wan Xing, continue extracting the universal energy crystals. Yu Jing, you need to speed things up. Evolving within 1-3 crystals is safe. Beyond 3 universal energy crystals, the chance of failure increases significantly," Su Huan emphasized. "I'll be quick," Yu Jing replied, her phoenix eyes slightly raised, revealing a hint of seriousness. Su Huan retrieved 3 small bags, about the size of a palm, from the wall behind him, unzipped them, and emptied out some miscellaneous items. There was water, food, and a familiar cylindrical object. Su Huan explained, "This is my short-term mission kit. Remember to bring it with you when you go out. It includes a 1000 milliliter saline solution and a small packet of beef jerky. But the beef isn't for you to eat, it's for attracting away sensitive-nosed evolved beasts in critical moments." Chapter 34 Integrated Water Purifier. Adrenaline goes without saying, it'll keep you alive. The last thing I'll do is use this little thing I made myself. Su Huan picked up a cylindrical object and bit it, mumbling, "Don't expect this to save your life. If you're really in a pinch, just bite it like this and press it." A beep beep sounded. Yu Jing's expression changed slightly. Su Huan took it out of his mouth and threw it out the window. A muffled bang. He shrugged and smiled at the others. "I guarantee you'll have a good time. But since it's handmade, it might not be very stable. If you're unlucky and get half dead, be more careful next time." Everyone was used to Su Huan's flippant attitude towards life and death. but it was still a little hard to keep up. After explaining, seeing that no one had any objections, Su Huan waved his hand. "Let's go." The front and rear doors opened, and Wang He led the group to quickly follow Su Huan. As their first outing since the apocalypse, Su Huan was extremely cautious, using no lighting equipment and relying entirely on his extensive survival experience to move through the suburbs. Liang Quan, carrying a sniper crossbow, stood guard on either side of Su Huan, while Yu Yu cautiously followed beside him. They would stop every now and then to listen carefully. "Pay attention to where I'm going, don't step on the weeds," Su Huan whispered, reminding them. Yu Yu nodded, then tugged at Su Huan's sleeve and pointed to the left, saying, "There's breathing over there." Su Huan's pupils suddenly sharpened. He cocked his gun and gave Lian Quan an order. The latter cautiously stepped forward, and soon a click of the trigger was heard. Su Huan followed and saw it a Rorqual cat with only half a body remaining. Its lower half was missing, and it was already critically injured and dying. Liang Quan then finished it off with a single crossbow bolt. This cat, like the bloodhound, belonged to the first-tier evolved beast category. It was emaciated and hairless, except for its 4 claws, which had evolved to a terrifyingly powerful, scythe-like shape. After crossing the stretch of wilderness, the group stepped onto concrete, which was much cleaner. Cars were pushed aside, and numerous zombies lay sprawled on the ground. Horrifying claw marks on the streetlights, missing pieces in the corners of walls, dark red bloodstains on the ground, everywhere bore the marks of a battle. Fortunately, it was too dark for the workers behind to see clearly, so they didn't have to endure the fear. The journey to the water plant was smooth and uneventful. Looking at the wall in front of them, Su Huan turned to Yu Yu and asked, "Listen to what's inside?" Yu Yu's eyes were slightly unfocused, absorbed in her hearing. After Su Huan's earlier reassurance, she wasn't so afraid of the sounds anymore. After a moment, she replied, "There are about 60 sound sources, mostly concentrated inside the buildings. There's the sound of splashing water in the water tower, and a scraping sound in the guardhouse on the left side of the entrance." Su Huan couldn't help but grin. In his previous life, he didn't have a fixed teammate. Having a perception-type evolved being could help him avoid many dangers. Instead of entering directly through the main gate, they circled around and found a huge gap on the side, as if it had been hit by a truck. The concrete ground was covered in wet stains. The ground crackled underfoot. The group quickly ventured deeper into the water plant. Something swimming over, 10 meters to the right. Yu Yu's face paled, her voice trembling. Su Huan calmly responded, pausing for 2 seconds before a compressed, cold blue arc of electricity appeared beneath his feet, using the water flow to propel it directly in the direction Yu Yu pointed. In a flash, everyone saw what it was. About a meter in diameter and a little over half a meter tall, it charged horizontally towards them with incredible speed, its 2 large pincers raised. It was a river crab. But even its speed couldn't match Su Huan's high-voltage electricity. It was instantly paralyzed by the voltage and flipped over 20% energy output, combined with energy compression, meant it was practically an instant kill. Not satisfied, Su Huan followed up with a triple volley of high-temperature explosives. He only stopped when he could smell a fresh aroma. The battles of energy providers were so straightforward: use massive amounts of energy to overwhelm you, and if you can't win, increase the amount. Before anyone could react, the river crab had been eliminated, and they continued forward. Things became much easier after that. With Yu Yu present, they avoided the crabs whenever possible. If they couldn't, Su Huan would quickly prepare a small feast of river delicacies. They then found a small red forklift and crane in the yard. After searching in the dark for 20 minutes, they finally located the small, integrated water purifier. Su Huan took a deep breath, suppressing his excitement, and pointed at the purifier. "Wang He, dismantle it within 20 minutes. I'll give you a permanent ticket. Every day your construction team is on the truck, I'll provide you with purified water." A hint of difficulty flashed in the eyes of the man beside him. "Boss Su, dismantling it is easy, but transporting it is difficult." Su Huan's tone was stern. "There's a truck in the yard. No matter what method you use, you have to get the stuff back." Wang He gritted his teeth and agreed, leading 20 workers to start work. Liang Quan strode over and whispered, "We found a lot of diesel and gasoline in the house next door." Su Huan's eyes lit up. Currently, the armed train's main power and energy source was still diesel. His ability only serves as a supplementary driving force. To truly drive the train, One must at least become a Tier 1 professional energy storage caller. Let's go, let's get them all back. You come with me, Su Huan said, heading towards the next room. Pushing open the door, he saw a dozen oil drums laid out in the room. The two divided the work. Liang Quan took the oil drums out, and Su Huan went to get the vehicle. Unlike trains, ordinary cars have many restrictions, so he could bypass the key start step and directly supply power to the entire vehicle's electrical circuit to start the engine. Soon, a pickup truck arrived. Yu kept watch nearby, and the two quickly loaded the trucks. Su Huan had evolved once, so his basic physical attributes were high, while Liang Quan was simply strong and powerful, even stronger than him. They managed to load 8 55-gallon, 58x88, oil drums. They could have loaded a few more, but the truck couldn't pull them anymore. For safety reasons, they decided to discard the rest. After working for over 20 minutes, Wang reported good news: the water purifier had been removed. It was towed away using a forklift and 2 trucks. Seeing that the main objective had been achieved, Su Huan wasn't greedy anymore. He didn't even search the remaining supplies and led his men out in a large group. Along the way, they attracted 2 more evolved beasts, but both were aquatic and easily defeated. Su Huan also had the workers load the river crab onto the truck. The group had come cautiously and moved swiftly. Except for those who needed to drive, everyone else, including Su Huan, jogged behind the trucks. The forklifts had to stop periodically to clear away debris blocking the way. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Born a Bad Seed. This section was all paved road, so it was easy to walk on. The troublesome part was the grassy area between the railway tracks. It was muddy and damp after the rain. Su Huan was mainly worried that something like the bloodthirsty vines might puncture the tires. A jumble of thoughts raced through his mind, racing rapidly in the 30°C heat, his chest burning as if on fire. Almost unconsciously, Su Huan looked up towards the side of the street. He couldn't see anything on the dark buildings, but he could feel a fierce killing intent staring at him. Goziechi, the thought flashed through his mind as half a sharp piece of rebar was already hidden in the night, hurtling towards him. But Su Huan wasn't one of those careless guards. The instant he saw Goziechi, he drew his pistol and fired, simultaneously ducking to avoid the bullet. Bang! The rebar pierced the side window of the pickup truck and embedded itself in the passenger seat. But this also caused all 5 of Su Huan's retaliatory shots to hit the wall. The battle broke out suddenly. Wang He and the others only heard a series of explosions, and had no idea what had happened. Screech! Several vehicles braked simultaneously, and the silent night was filled only with the heavy breathing of the group. I can't hear his voice, Yu said quickly. Su Huan glanced at the shattered car window, stood up, and calmly said, "You can stand in the back, you don't need to come over. The train conductor still has the mind to care about women at a time like this." Goziechi's voice echoed repeatedly from inside the dark building. Although he was laughing, it sounded like a lone wolf howling through its teeth. Su Huan grinned and said, "I didn't expect you to survive the evolutionary beast tide. As expected of the train conductor, while others are still fighting for a little food, you've already started to take advantage of the rules of the apocalypse." Goziechi's voice was filled with sincere admiration. Su Huan narrowed his eyes, savoring Goziechi's attack just now. Both the power and the timing were terrifying. "You've grown up so fast, it's keeping me up at night. Why don't you come out? Let's have a good chat? My gun's out of bullets." His tone was sincere and honest, not like that of 2 enemies who had fought to the death just moments before, but like 2 friends chatting casually. TCH, the rest of the group that got on the bus with me are practically dead. Even without me, they'd still be dead. Do you know how many people were in that water plant? Huan said over 40. They're all dead. Yet, I killed them. Huh? Su Huan raised an eyebrow in surprise. Yu quietly approached from behind, pointing to a spot on the 2nd floor. The window was shattered, and it was pitch black. Su Huan waved her away. He could tell she hadn't moved. "One's dead, right? What do you think?" Su Huan smiled faintly. He silently walked in that direction. Upstairs. Gao Ziechi leaned against the low wall behind him, laboriously taking a cigarette from the pack with one hand, pinching the mouthpiece and holding it above his head. "Light it for me." Su Huan downstairs paused. There was no movement for a long time. The cigarette remained there, waiting. Finally, a high-temperature bullet flew past. A slight smile finally appeared on Gao Ziechi's tense face. He took a light drag, the red glow illuminating his face, revealing terrifying black lines covering most of his skin, making him look sinister and intimidating. Gao Ziechi exhaled a smoke ring and softly called out, "Su Huan." Su Huan's faint response came from downstairs. The two were very close, one up, one down. "You're a fucking bastard." "Huh." Gao Ziechi suddenly sprang up, throwing down what was wrapped in his clothes, and a huge flash of light came into view. Boom! The explosion blasted through the wall, masking the crisp sound of the bullet leaving the barrel. In the darkness, a series of heavy footsteps echoed from upstairs, and the person downstairs quickly took off their coat. Taking a dozen steps back, Su Huan didn't even look back before pulling out saline solution from his waist pouch and rinsing himself with it. He only breathed a sigh of relief after a while, when he felt no discomfort. He chuckled and muttered, "A defender, resorting to poison." Liang Quan, holding a sniper crossbow, hesitated beside him. "Should we chase him?" Su Huan waved his hand. He had clearly seen Gao Ziechi poisoned when the light was bright. It must have been the Jiangli evolution beast. Plus, he'd been shot by him. Even if he escaped, he probably wouldn't survive. Moreover, breaking through that broken wall had consumed a lot of his energy. Chasing a defender in such narrow terrain was something only a madman would do. "Let's go, get back as soon as possible." Because the pressure left by the white serpent Mojang was still there, the group quickly returned to the train. The water purifier was nearly 5 meters tall. To place it in the back carriages, they would have to break through the roof. So they simply placed it in the number 2 sightseeing carriage, taking up some of the second floor space. Although it was getting further and further away from Su Huan's initial plan, it was still a good choice. The moment the water purifier was finally installed in the carriage, a huge weight was lifted from Su Huan's shoulders. With a purifier, the train would no longer have to worry about water. A processing capacity of 10 m3h was more than enough for drinking. It could even provide a daily bath for everyone on the train. "Boss Su, the work's done." Wang He interrupted Su Huan's thoughts. Looking up, he saw over 20 men drenched in sweat, as if they'd been pulled from a water tank. Su Huan had witnessed their hard work. Although Wang He would haggle, he never slacked off. They were all honest, hard-working men. When the water purifier couldn't be brought up into the carriage, they and the forklift lifted it up together. Su Huan turned and gave Liang Quan a few instructions. A moment later, he and Yu returned carrying several boxes. Su Huan said to Wang He, 1 cup of instant noodles, 2 bottles of drinks, and 5 compressed biscuits for each person. This is an extra bonus for the 20 people. As for what I promised you before, that's all. Wang He smiled upon hearing this. "Thank you, Boss Su." Su Huan continued, "Don't rush. Later, pick a few more workers to install the water purifier for me tonight. The workers will also be provided with a meal." Wang He quickly agreed. He left the supervision to Yu Jing and the others. He wouldn't interfere. Back in his room, he tore off his sticky clothes. He used up all the remaining purified water in the tub, filling it completely. Covered in sweat, Su Huan slowly submerged himself. Feeling the cool liquid enveloping his body, his mind, which had been somewhat drowsy from the heat, gradually cleared. He slowly sorted out the events of the day, carefully reviewing them. With a splash, Su Huan emerged from the water, picked up the logbook beside the tub, and rode in slightly damp handwriting. December 20th, evening, 29 degrees Celsius, 34 degrees Celsius. I feel like I've become the villain in a novel. Train conductor's log. Chapter 36 Countdown, Day 4. The back carriages were somewhat dim. The old man stood by the window, his face grim. He knew something was wrong when he saw the doors open, but he still clung to a sliver of hope. Unexpectedly, the train reversed, and Su Huan personally led the group out, filling him with immense joy. However, one evolved human remained on board, and he could only wait for good news from Gao Ziechi. The outcome was obvious. Su Huan had returned. Whether Gao Ziechi was dead or had escaped was irrelevant. No one in the back carriages had the right to negotiate with Su Huan anymore. The train conductor's authority was once again unprecedentedly solidified. A knock sounded on the door. "Come in," Su Huan said calmly, showing no intention of getting out of the bathtub. He never locked the door. He didn't need to lock it when someone was there, and even less so when no one was. Yu Jing and the others often came into his room to fetch his things. Yu pushed open the door and entered, her gaze sweeping around the room before settling on the bathroom in the corner. Hearing the sound of water inside, a slight embarrassment crept in. "I see you seem to be injured." Su Huan put down the logbook, his gaze sweeping over his left shoulder. A large, charred patch, like a hard shell, clung to it. Some of the venom Gao Zhe had thrown down had seeped into his collar. To prevent the toxin from spreading, he had directly carbonized that part of the flesh with high heat. He was already used to such injuries. Once he evolved, or after some time, the carbonized part would fall off. Creak. Su Huan opened the door and saw Yu standing in the center of the room with a tray holding iodine and bandages. "I want to help you treat your wound." Seeing Su Huan naked, Yu instinctively thought of some cold, rudimentary healing process, her face tense. Su Huan then remembered that she was a nurse. After a moment's thought, "Come here." He casually draped his injured arm over the outside. Yu stepped forward and prepared the items. Before she could even begin, Su Huan said, "Something's missing. Go get me some of that bottle of liquor from the dining car, and some ice." Yu quickly did as she was told, returning shortly with a glass of ice and whiskey. She looked troubled and said, "This liquor won't kill the virus." Su Huan scoffed, "That's for me." "Oh," Yu said nothing more, squatting by the bathroom door to tend to his wounds. Su Huan drank about half a glass in one gulp, crunching the ice cubes in his mouth. Alcohol could be a form of purification that could be maintained even in the apocalypse, but it was expensive. In his previous life, his resources were scarce, and he never had the chance to indulge in such luxuries. Now that the most pressing matters on the armed train were settled, he could finally relax. After a while, Su Huan turned to look at the woman fumbling around on his shoulder, using tweezers to remove only a small piece of charred flesh. He frowned, then flicked it with his finger. A large chunk of charred flesh broke off, and blood gushed out. "Hurry up and get it treated. We're going into town tomorrow, so you need to get up early to cook," Su Huan said calmly, as if the dent in his shoulder wasn't his flesh. The woman's hands and feet moved much more quickly. "What do you want for breakfast tomorrow?" Su Huan swirled his wineglass. "Wonton, please." Soon, the wound was treated, and Yu began packing her things, occasionally stealing glances at Su Huan. Hesitant to speak. "Say what you want to say quickly, I'm going to sleep," Su Huan said impatiently. I really didn't hear his location." Yu looked like a child who had done something wrong, her face showing a hint of unease. She was originally very happy to become an evolved being, feeling that she had some use, but she never expected such a big mistake on her first mission. The enemy was so close and she didn't even give a warning. Thinking of Su Huan's cold and ruthless style in the past, she was on tenterhooks the whole way back, afraid that her mistake would cause both mother and daughter to be kicked off the train. After hesitating for a long time, she decided to admit her mistake first, so as not to be remembered by the petty train conductor. "I heard his little black notebook is full of people he doesn't like." Su Huan was somewhat surprised. "Am I that scary?" Then a dark voice came out, "Didn't you really hear me, or are you hoping I die out there?" Yu's almond-shaped eyes widened suddenly, her crystal-clear lips instantly losing their color. With her easily bullied appearance, his fingers traced the hair at the woman's temple, his tone low and tinged with desire. "You don't want your daughter to be stranded in the wilderness with you because of your mistake, do you?" Water splashed, and Su Huan stood up. The woman panicked and tried to get up to explain, but because she had been squatting for too long, her legs went numb, and she staggered and knelt on the floor, her round thighs pressing out a plump curve. His fingertips brushed against the woman's sensitive and delicate earlobe, and Su Huan sneered, "Not bad attitude." Perhaps Gao Zhe was right, he was a bad seed. The next day, Su Huan woke up very early, in a not-so-good mood. Sitting in the cold, hazy room, Su Huan gritted his teeth in a somber mood before walking to the window. Just like yesterday, it started raining again in the middle of the night, the air thick with mist and a persistent, stifling heat. The air conditioner, running at full throttle, emitted a strange smell. He pulled back the metal panel, picked up the thermometer from the table, and held it out the window, watching the red line climb higher. Su Huan's already bad mood was further dampened by frustration. December 21st, rain, 35 degrees Celsius. 4 days until the heat wave hits. He left the compartment and went straight to carriage number 2. A 5-meter-tall integrated water purifier stood there quietly, a soothing sight. He walked around the purifier. The metal nameplate on it displayed its information. It could filter river and lake water with a turbidity of 3000 mgl, equivalent to the turbidity of river water carrying a large amount of silt after a heavy rain, or untreated lake water. The end of the purifier connected to the water tank inside the carriage. Each carriage has 2 of these water tanks, each capable of storing 2 tons of water. They are equipped with internal baffles to prevent liquid sloshing, similar to the oil tanks next to them. On the second floor, an opening allows rainwater to collect in the storage tank. This significantly improved Su Huan's outlook on rainy days. With the addition of a pH adjustment device at the end, collecting clean water from the acid rain zone would no longer be a problem. He placed his hand on the water purifier, and the massive machine began to operate, filtering all the collected rainwater and pouring it into the already constructed water tank. However, it only filled half the tank. When Su Huan came down, it was just beginning to lighten. Yu was already busy in the dining car, carrying a humble feeling of "don't make things difficult for me since I'm working so hard." Su Huan gave a silent, cold laugh, sitting beside her and watching her. Yu was somewhat nervous, tidying up here and wiping there, not daring to be idle between tasks. The hem of her ginger-yellow shirt lifted slightly with each movement, revealing her alabaster waistline. Her evolved, more flexible muscles taut in a breathtaking arc as she bent over, like willow branches swaying in the spring breeze, only to spring back to their full, flowing curve the moment she stood up. Finally, the wontons were ready. Yu carefully brought them over. "Brother Su, would you like some chili oil?" Su Huan, seeing her meek and submissive demeanor, felt a surge of annoyance. He scooped a large spoonful of chili oil into the bowl, stirred it, and then picked up a wonton, holding it to her lips. Yu hesitated, puffed out her lips, and blew on it for a long time, until the wonton skin wrinkled, revealing the glistening meat underneath, before finally taking a bite. The wonton rolled in the spoon, but the skin and meat remained unharmed. This chapter has been reviewed and edited. Chapter 37 Tier 1 Light Armor. At 7 o'clock sharp, Xiaobai arrived at the dining car. He had a good routine. Regardless of whether he had a night shift, he would always arrive at the dining car at 7 to wait for Su Huan to assign tasks. By 7:30, everyone had gradually arrived. When Su Huan saw Yujing, his eyes lit up slightly, not because she had changed into a new outfit, but because of the energy fluctuations emanating from her. Perhaps due to her recent evolution, the unconscious rhythm of her energy had entered his perception range. Evolved? LV1 energy erosion, Yujing said, placing a palm-sized piece of metal on the table. Su Huan picked up the metal and weighed it in his hand. It was unexpectedly light, about half the weight of normal steel. The feeling was similar to the tanks of certain large corporations in his previous life, but with subtle differences. His eyes held a hint of curiosity. "You changed its weight?" Yujing pinched her earlobe, her demeanor carrying the clear and rational air characteristic of a researcher. "I've incorporated a night demon's claws into this steel. Now, the steel plate is not only 52% lighter, but its strength and toughness have also significantly improved. However, without measuring instruments, I can't give you accurate data." A high temperature rose in Su Huan's hand, and the steel plate quickly turned red-hot like a branding iron. "Don't worry, I've done the high-temperature test. It's slightly higher than the melting point of steel, and there's no calcification," Yujing said calmly. "Besides, I feel this isn't the limit. I just didn't have much time, so I brought it here for you to verify." Su Huan didn't speak, continuing to fiddle with the steel plate in his hands. The red-hot iron rapidly cooled, sizzling, and soon returned to its original appearance, a bit grayer than ordinary steel, but otherwise indistinguishable. His eyes gleamed with joy. Although the color and feel were slightly different, the steel plate Yujing had researched was already close to the first-tier light armor level in terms of specifications. In his previous life, Su Huan was a lone wolf and had no need for such things, but large companies invested heavily in these new materials. Leveraging the characteristics of the manufacturers and combining them with post-apocalyptic materials, they had developed many new things. Light armor was one of them. Its strength was comparable to excellent carbon steel, but its toughness far exceeded that of steel, making it less prone to fatigue, and its weight only 40% of steel. If the steel plates of armed trains were replaced with this light armor material, even without increasing power, the armor could easily be stacked to a thickness of 30 mm plus. It was of great significance. How long will it take you to synthesize such a piece of metal? Su Huan raised his eyebrows and asked. Yu Jing pinched her smooth chin and pondered, this material has not yet reached its best effect. If its limit is finally determined, the speed can be faster. Considering my energy limitations, it should take most of a day to process 1 square meter of board. Su Huan frowned. This speed was still too slow, far too slow. No wonder only large forces could handle this. Individuals or small teams didn't have that much time to waste on basic materials. If Yu Jing didn't evolve, she wouldn't be able to finish pasting the entire train, even if she worked for a year without eating or drinking. It seemed they still needed to find a way to motivate the passengers. The current method of forcing them to work was definitely not going to work. It had to be like a construction team, setting aside a separate group of people to form a research or production team, providing them with ample resources, and having them work 24/7. One manufacturer could produce 2 pieces a day, and if they slept less, 3 pieces a day wasn't impossible. They were all evolved beings, with good physiques, so staying up all night was no problem for them. 10 manufacturers would make 30 pieces a day. Looking at it this way, there was a lot of hope. Thinking of this, Su Huan's furrowed brows slowly relaxed. Suddenly, he remembered something and quickly looked at Liang Quan, saying, turn on the air conditioning in the back carriages too. The weather will get hotter and hotter, so we won't need to turn it off. I almost forgot about that. It's been raining these past 2 days, the weather's been humid and hot. It's easy for people to die. If everyone dies, there won't be anyone to help him with the work later. Liang Quan agreed and got up to get busy, but his steps were heavier today. Su Huan watched his broad back thoughtfully. Now, Liang Quan was the only one in the train team who hadn't evolved. Perhaps the method is wrong, like Gao Ziechi, who hadn't been exposed to the universal energy crystals or had long-term contact with zombies or evolved beasts, but still evolved. It must be because of the Defender's trait's LV1 combat factor. He hadn't really paid attention to the reasons for the Defender's evolution before, only knowing that these types of evolvers were more likely to break through in battle. Unlike the other 4 types, who needed to slowly accumulate with universal energy crystals and only evolved under specific conditions. Su Huan guessed that his own fighting style was too conservative. It wasn't conducive to Lao Liang's evolution. But there was no need to rush. They were entering the city today, and there would inevitably be times when they had to fight desperately. He would arrange more scenes for Lao Liang then. Thinking this through, Su Huan continued, we don't need to mass-produce them for now. You just need to make a prototype, and then continue researching other things. I hope you'll explore 2 directions next. Yu Jing looked up with interest, her phoenix eyes slightly upturned, radiating a spirited energy. Which 2 directions? Su Huan pointed to the train window. Although there are steel plates blocking it, many of the train's windows are broken, and the air tightness is very poor. I hope you'll continue to work on materials, to get some high-strength transparent materials to replace the ordinary tempered glass. Secondly, I need you to find a way to solve the transportation problem. In the future, we'll often need to go deep into some special terrains to transport supplies and equipment. With our current level of technology, we simply can't lift those big things. Just getting a water purifier back was already a huge undertaking. If the terrain is narrow and forklifts can't get in, they can only carry it by hand. But this is the perilous apocalypse. While working on one side, they also have to guard against zombie attacks on the other. If they succeed 2 or 3 times out of 10, they're lucky. Although Su Huan wasn't sure if this was within Yu Jing's area of expertise, she was the closest person on the vehicle. So he had no choice but to entrust it to her. Yu Jing frowned slightly. If you want to improve your personal carrying ability, the best way is a simple exoskeleton, but it requires a lot of calculations and practice. There are only a few laptops on the vehicle, and they're all offline, so we can't even download the relevant software. Su Huan's fingers moved rhythmically, subconsciously scanning the area, but in matters like this, Wan Xing and the others always just listened silently. Only Yu Jing could be discussed with him. He sighed inwardly. There was still a lack of talent. Don't rush the computer stuff. Today we're entering the city, so let's try to get more electronic equipment. I'm planning to do a full vehicle monitoring system anyway, so we can take care of that at the same time. Chapter 38 Hell on Earth. Huan turned to Xiaoba and handed him the steel plate. Try to see if you can control this metal. Xiaoba stared intently at the palm-sized steel plate. After a long while, the plate slowly flew up, turning into a spherical shape as if being kneaded by a pair of large hands. Bang! The steel ball fell onto the table. Xiaoba shook his head. This kind of metal is very difficult to control. It consumes 4 to 5 times my energy compared to ordinary metals. It seems to contain many impurities. Huan seemed thoughtful. Xiaoba's words confirmed some of his guesses. In his previous life, Master Ba's manipulation of Tier 1 light armor and ordinary metals was no different, at least in his eyes. But back then, Master Ba was already a Tier 2 professional. He was quite famous among the wanderers in the acid rain zone. Perhaps one of the conditions for metal affinity to advance to its superior ability metal control is to devour these new materials. In that case, if the new materials are used to forge train armor, wild metal manipulators won't be able to move the train in a short time. However, he wasn't sure if those large companies had operators with high-level skills like Xiaoba. This was something that had always puzzled him. It had only been 4 years since the apocalypse began, so why did these forces already have 5th-tier revolvers? And why had they developed so many complementary professional systems? Even if they possessed vast amounts of manpower and resources, the overall environment had changed. Could they have accomplished so much in just 4 years? Evolution was crazy, but was scientific research also crazy? While Huan was speaking, Yu served her daughter a bowl of wontons. Jing looked at her mother's flushed cheeks, slightly puzzled. Mom, what's wrong? Yu glanced furtively at Huan, then awkwardly stuck out a red tongue. I tried something spicy, and my tongue still hurts. Jing said helplessly, if you can't eat spicy food, don't try it. You sit and eat, I'll go get some water. Seeing her daughter get up to walk towards the kitchen, the woman's face instantly showed a look of horror. She quickly stopped her. No need, I can get it myself. Although her daughter was intelligent and capable, she had an explosive talent for cooking for some reason. Even when making cold dishes, the clatter of pots and pans sounded like festive fireworks. Jing hesitated for a moment, then sat back down. After a while, Quan returned. Huan explained the next steps of the plan. 1. Complete the first phase of the armed train. 2. Collect as many electronic products as possible to lay the foundation for the subsequent full train monitoring and modifications. Next, you need to prepare for the real apocalypse. Apocalypse? Isn't this it now? Jing asked doubtfully. Huan's lips curled up. This? It's just the beginning. 8:20. The armed train left the water plant's perimeter and quietly headed towards Mojiang City, a city with a population of 7 million. Due to the large amount of steel plates and water purifiers, the train's initial speed was very slow. After an unknown amount of time, a heavy panting sound came from the railway tracks outside the water plant. A mutated pig, easily 3 meters long, emerged from the bushes, its massive, obese body resembling a small mountain. Its dark red mane bristled like steel needles, its tusks protruded into bony blades. And its hooves had mutated into a metallic texture, each step causing the sleepers and gravel beneath its feet to creak and groan. If Huan were here, he would recognize it as a first-tier evolved beast, the gluttonous pig. Its combat strength was far greater than that of a bloodhound, but it lacked the same ferocity. It spent most of its time hunting. The gluttonous pig's nostrils twitched, its tusks pried open a ramen noodle box, licking the scraps, and a satisfied snort escaped its throat. The pungent smell of fragrant oil lowered its alertness, and it failed to notice the strange noise coming from the seam of the railway tracks behind it. Several pale, bony spikes pierced the air. Crack! The gluttonous boar reacted with lightning speed, its hind hooves pushing off the ground as its massive, fat body leaped into the air, the metal hooves clashing against the bone spikes with a dull thud. But one bone spike slipped through, embedding itself about 10 centimeters into its rear end. Before the gluttonous boar could even howl in pain, a bone whip lashed through the air, wrapping around its body and yanking it hard. Its mane snapped, large cracks appeared on its skin, and blood flowed. The gluttonous boar was utterly enraged. Its small eyes turned bloodshot as it glared at its attacker. It charged forward like a rampaging tank, its limbs pushing off the ground. Boom! After the shock wave subsided, A gigantic figure, 3 meters tall, stood before the gluttonous boar. It had no neck, its head was sunken into its chest cavity, only a pair of dark red eyes gleaming eerily. One hand held the bone whip wrapped around the boar's body, the other plunged into its eye socket. HMPH. The tall figure uttered a muffled syllable, flipping over and straddling the boar's back. Numerous bone spurs sprang from its knees, spinning and embedding themselves into the boar's belly like a meat grinder. The gluttonous boar screamed in agony, its flesh and blood splattering everywhere, but it had no chance to struggle. The tall figure lay sprawled amidst the spreading flesh, its shoulders slightly open, revealing a dark human head beneath. Sharp teeth gnawed viciously at the flesh. An hour later, large swaths of flesh on the ground had been evaporated by the intense heat into blood fat-like substance, its color gradually darkening. Only then did the tall humanoid zombie raise its head atop the mountain of flesh. Its dark face was covered in crimson blood, and as it gazed at the railway stretching into the distance, a glimmer of clarity seemed to return to its eyes. HMPH. Train. Bad seed. On the elevated railway tracks, the creaking and groaning sounds continued incessantly. The twisted rails straightened under an inexplicable force. The armored train moved slowly forward. Except for Liang Quan, who was driving, the others stood on the second-floor observation car, overlooking the once prosperous city. Hundreds upon hundreds of cars were piled up in the streets, some burned to mere charred skeletons, some containing struggling zombies, and others containing survivors who hadn't managed to escape. They were desperately trapped amidst this car wreckage. To the right of the tracks, a derailed train pierced through 3 office buildings and a twisted parabolic arc. The locomotive crashed into the concrete load-bearing wall of the 27th floor of the central building. The 16 carriages resembled the skeleton of a giant, cast-iron python. The shards of glass curtain walls peeling off like scales, refracting countless phosphorescent sparks in the midday sun. The glass curtain walls of the skyscrapers on both sides were shattered, revealing numerous dark holes. In the daylight, white cocoons could be clearly seen inside. The contorted, pulsating human figures inside were vaguely discernible. Swarms of ordinary zombies roamed the city, rushing to the windows at the sound of the train. Glass shattered, and they splattered like dumplings being dropped into a pot, creating a mountain of corpses. The passengers behind them wore expressions of complex emotions, fear, shock, bewilderment, a mix of everything. Scarface stared at the horrific scene, his face contorted in horror. "What is that Sugai trying to do?" he asked. "The city is full of zombies now, is he delivering food?" An old man sat nearby, gazing at the once glorious city with a nostalgic expression. "No, if he wants to go north, this is the fastest route." "The Mojiang Bridge?" "Yes, to get to the Mojiang Bridge, you have to cross Mojiang City." The old man's expression was grave. "How many people are there in Mojiang City?" "Several million, I guess. Even if only 70% become zombies, that's still several million. Has that Sugai gone mad? He shouldn't be taking us all with him." Scarface cursed frantically, beads of sweat pouring down his face. Suddenly, he saw the pale-faced woman beside him, grabbed her, wiped the sweat from his face onto her chest, then shoved her away, cursing, "You filthy bitch, you reek of sourness. You're so cheap." But even his henchmen could see his bravado masked his inner fear. He was using his anger to vent his inner turmoil. The woman, pushed to the ground, dared not complain, instead offering a fawning smile as she moved closer. Her husband was dead, drug brother and the tattooed man were dead too. Without Scarface's help, she wouldn't even be able to scrape together a ticket for the next train journey. The old man, seeing the woman being violated yet unable to utter a sound, sighed silently. Since Gao Zhe died, no one had been able to control Scarface. Right now, it was only because time was short and his mind still functioned that the other man could maintain a facade of respect. His time was running out. In the apocalypse, no one would use precious food to feed a useless old man. Only by controlling the train and utilizing the abundant surplus resources could he survive. Perhaps Mojiang City was his last chance. Chapter 39 Fire Truck. Soon, some people spotted the train slowly passing overhead. But looking at the zombies wandering between the trains and the dozens of meters of height of the overpass, most people gave up hope of rescue. The ordeal of the past 10 days had left these survivors emaciated and their spirits numb. The truly courageous wouldn't have waited that long. They would have long since become one of the wanderers. But a boy trapped in an SUV seemed to see a glimmer of hope. Taking advantage of the zombie's attention being drawn to the train overhead, he quietly unlocked the door and slipped out. Following the route he had observed over the past 2 days, he climbed onto a sedan, then circled around a group of trucks blocking the road, carefully walking on the asphalt. His eyes were fixed on the wandering zombies nearby. He held his breath, making his steps as light as possible. But as he passed a van, he overlooked the zombie driver inside. Thud! A muffled sound came from the car window. A rotting face was pressed against the glass, its crimson eyes greedily staring at the boy. The boy's scalp tingled, and he panicked, immediately starting to run. Fortunately, the zombie driver in the van made no sound. The boy dodged left and right, but didn't encounter a single living zombie. A few did, but their deaths were gruesome, their heads hanging from the cracked metal spikes on the side of the van. This scene was witnessed by the people above. Huan looked at the boy's front, where 2 zombies had suddenly had their heads blown off by metal spikes from the van next to them, and glanced at Oba in the wheelchair beside him. He asked with interest, "Is the distance already this far?" Oba pursed his thin lips, his gaze beneath his tousled hair following the boy below the bridge. "There's no distance limit, it's just that the farther away, the more energy is consumed." Truly a high-level ability, Huan remarked. His gaze also followed the boy's movements below, wanting to see how long he could hold out. Of course, he was watching to see how long Oba could last. Besides the people on the train, some survivors also witnessed this miraculous scene. They didn't know why, but they didn't want to miss this opportunity, so they all opened the doors and fled. This commotion immediately alerted the zombies below. The roaring cacophony of zombies sent chills down everyone's spines. A woman had barely emerged when a zombie pounced on her, its gaping maw about to bite her, when a steel bar fell from the overpass, piercing her skull with a sickening thud. Below, however, lay a dozen or so fleeing people. Because they had spared the woman, the boy who had started the chase, in his panic, had run into a horde of zombies and was devoured. "Help, save me. I have gold. Please let me on the train. Mom. Run." Realizing escape was hopeless, some began pleading with the passing train. But their shouts only emboldened the zombies. "Let the child on the train. Please, let him live. I'll do anything for him, just let him live." A woman knelt on a bus, cradling a child of about 10 years old, screaming upwards. Zombies surged forward, engulfing the woman. The young child was also swallowed by the horde. The heart-wrenching cries of the zombies chilled everyone to the bone. Huan's face remained smiling, but the frost in his eyes almost spilled out. I harmed them." Oba gripped the armrests of his wheelchair tightly, his face pale. No one likes to see their kind slaughtered, especially such meaningless deaths, but if you want to change things, you have to bear the consequences. Huan's voice was calm, even tinged with coldness. This time, he didn't comfort Oba, nor did he attempt to instill his beliefs in him. He simply told him what ability was, and what the cost was. No one can convince anyone else. You can't convince someone stronger than you, nor someone similar to you. In the end, you'll find you can't even convince someone weaker than you. Soon, the dozen or so survivors under the bridge were also submerged. Huan lost interest in watching, stepped off the train, and went to the driver's cab. Huan was intently staring at the tracks ahead. Because of a train derailment, a large number of rails had collapsed and twisted. Although that section of the road was already passed, caution was advised. If dozens of trains were to derail, the team's current capabilities would be insufficient to save them. A railway map of Mojiang City hung behind the cockpit. Mojiang City had 3 stations: Mojiang South Station, Mojiang Station, and Mojiang North Station. Huan observed for a moment, his gaze lingering on a street outside Mojiang South Station. If he remembered correctly, several fire trucks were stuck there. They were all fully loaded with water. When the apocalypse broke out, these fire trucks tried to fight fires but got stuck. Later, they were driven out and became the core vehicles of the Mojiang Mutual Aid Vehicle Team. Thanks to the fire truck's sturdy carbon steel bodies and the large amount of purified water, they maintained the team's cohesion in the early stages. Now that he had trains and water purifiers, Huan naturally didn't care about the fire trucks and those few tons of purified water. He was eyeing another batch of things on the fire trucks: firearms and ammunition. In his previous life, he had heard that the fire trucks had also carried law enforcement personnel, and many weapons had been left on board. Later, Huan and his gang of hangers unpacked them up. The pistol in his hand had long become a decoration, and the last few bullets were wasted on Gauze. Last time at the water plant, because there were many remaining evolved beasts inside the building, a large-scale search wasn't conducted after finding the water purifier. The subsequent tracks would pass through more cities, and before the evolved human team was fully formed, firearms were the best alternative. Some powerful weapons would still be useful even in the later stages of the apocalypse. Therefore, the next task was to obtain those firearms on the last day before leaving Mojiang City and to expedite the armed train project as much as possible. Having sorted out his thoughts, Su Huan looked up. He saw several swaying zombies ahead of the tracks, excitedly rushing towards the train as if they'd found a delicious can of food. Don't go into the platform later, just stay outside. There are too many zombies inside, it's inconvenient to get off and move around, Su Huan instructed. Liang Quan pulled down the control lever. Understood. Several zombies had their legs severed and were crushed under the wheels. The armed train moved forward steadily without any disturbance. The terrain on both sides gradually leveled with the train, with tall buildings standing tall, but the tracks were blocked off on both sides, preventing any situation of being surrounded by a horde of zombies. There's something up ahead, Liang Quan whispered. The railway sleepers were stained with blood, along with fragments of corpses and debris. Su Huan squinted and saw a strange figure crouching on the railing beside the tracks, hunched over, making it appear only about a meter tall. Its bare upper body was a dark greenish-brown, and its back was covered in fleshy growths, like fruits hanging from its body. Most were dark red, with a few black. Its scarlet eyes were fixed on the train, and it chuckled as it tore a black growth from its back. To avoid realistic inconsistencies, the map has been completely rewritten. The population, weapon types, and systems have all been altered. Chapter 40 Ghost. Black pus sprayed out. The fleshy tumor in his thin, withered hand flew up and down. His left hand pointed forward at the train, slowly moving in its direction, while his right hand stretched back, his body hunched over, his eyes straining upwards to see the train's direction. With a whoosh, the twisted arm threw the fleshy ball out. Bang! The tumor slammed onto the train, and instantly, a gush of brownish-green pus erupted, completely obscuring the side windows. Bubbling and crackling appeared on the surrounding metal armor. However, given the corrosive speed of a first-tier Earth demon, it might not be able to penetrate a 15mm steel plate even in a week. Moreover, the armor on the front of the train was over 27mm thick. But the most distinctive feature of this thing was its disgusting nature. Besides being corrosive, the pus also served as a signal flare. To humans, it smelled foul, but to zombies, it was like a signal flare. Hey, look what I found here, delicious food. Come and eat. It could cause a small horde of zombies within a radius of tens of meters. The best way is to quickly wash it away with a water gun, or sprinkle some dry powder to neutralize it. In his previous life, he dealt most with these Tier 1 Earth ghosts. To others, these ranged zombies were disgusting, but his profession at the time was electromagnetic master. He could accelerate small objects like steel balls or coins to supersonic speeds. Taking down these fragile Earth ghosts was a piece of cake. But it wasn't without its misses. Thinking of some unpleasant memories, Su Huan's face turned frighteningly gloomy. Ignore him. When Xiao Ba comes, just kill him. He hadn't yet formed a specific profession and couldn't precisely manipulate electromagnetic force. However, he still had some usage skills, so Su Huan directly launched high-temperature energy to reduce the manipulation of the medium. The disadvantage was high consumption and small range. Soon, a large wave of zombies surged forward, led by a Tier 1 butcher, dragging a Tier 1 skull crusher that had been dead for a long time as a weapon. On its fat, mountain-like body, two small eyes blazed with the purest malice. Do zombies kill each other? Since smashing one last time, Liang Quan was no longer afraid of these blustering, cowardly evolved zombies. After all, he was driving a steel dragon weighing thousands of tons. Even a real dragon emerging from the water would have to give way to a rampaging armored train. The butcher's characteristic is to seek out weapons. If there aren't suitable weapons around when it emerges from its cocoon, it will grab other zombies. This unlucky guy was just caught by him. Su Huan looked at the skull crusher with a strange expression. Its muscles were huge and strong, and its hands were hammers the size of watermelons. Originally a very ferocious zombie, its head was now smashed, and its upper body was reduced to a large mass of flesh and blood. If he remembered correctly, in his previous life, there was a legendary butcher who particularly coveted the Skull Crusher's hammers, so at each stage, it would find a Skull Crusher of the same level to use as a weapon. Could this be the one in front of him? Sue, are we going to fight? Kiziloba's clear voice came from behind, the boy seemingly regaining his fighting spirit. Returning to his senses, Su Huan nodded and said solemnly, Liang Quan, prepare to ram it. Stop when you kill the leader, the butcher. Zioba. Clear out that annoying earth ghost on the wall, make sure to hit its back. Understood. The moment Liang Quan pushed the lever all the way down, the entire train seemed to transform into a roaring steel behemoth. Kiziloba's gaze fell on the earth ghost chasing the train on the railing, his pupils completely tinged with the color of liquid metal. Su Huan took a deep breath, gripping the remaining first-tier energy crystal in his hand, the tungsten steel ram humming and vibrating from the infused azure arcs of electricity. Don't accelerate. There's a train on the tracks 500 meters away. Yu's voice clearly reached everyone's ears from the second-floor observation deck. Su Huan frowned, ceasing to pump more energy into the engine. 500 meters, can you stop? Liang Quan replied in a muffled voice, no problem. As the wheels crushed the foremost horde of ordinary zombies, the sound was like hundreds of rotting tomatoes exploding simultaneously. Dark red blood splattered in a fan shape across the 15mm composite armor, the blast net instantly covered in shattered organs, and half a zombie's head was wedged against the edge of the observation window, the greedy, ferocious light frozen in its empty eye sockets becoming the first footnote to this bloody scene. The butcher swung the Skullcrusher's corpse at the front of the vehicle. Sizzle, tens of thousands of volts of high-voltage electricity surged into the butcher's body along the ram, scorching his obese form into charred white smoke. He was instantly paralyzed, then the ram rammed deep into him. Bright yellow fat splattered all along the way. A horde of about 100 zombies was plowed through like wheat fields by the steel, severed limbs arcing through the air, the blood mist kicked up by the impact refracting rainbows in the sunlight. Bang! Another disgusting tumor slammed into the front window, this time mixed with butcher's blood and demonic pus, completely obscuring the view ahead. The armored train emitted a sharp whistle and began to brake. Kiziloba stretched out his fingers and grabbed at the air. A blast-proof net on the side suddenly flew out, transforming into a huge metal net that scooped up the demon. The metal wires rapidly contracted, instantly shredding the hunched figure into a pile of minced meat. Sizzle, the train finally came to a stop, but without a real-time electronic map, Su Huan didn't know how far they were from Mojiang South Station. Buzz! The lights in the driver's cab turned on, and the air conditioning accelerated. Su Huan frowned at the filthy glass in front of him and ordered, Zioba, finish off that butcher. Ignore the ordinary zombies. Lao Lang, come with me. He then walked towards the dining car at the back, where he saw Yujing and her daughter getting off. Su Huan said, Yujing, today you're in charge of connecting the dining car's water tank to the engine. Connect the high-pressure water gun so we can clean the windows anytime. Okay. Yujing hesitated for a moment, then looked at the blood and flesh hanging on the blast netting on both sides and nodded. Walking to carriage number 2, Huan Xing sat at a huge table. Besides the carriage lights, several large table lamps were also lit, all shining on the table in the center. On the table were the river crabs Su Huan had casually brought back that day. Huan Xing was carefully dismantling their shells with a dagger sharpened from a night demon claw. Seeing Su Huan and Liang Quan approaching, she asked, Are you going on a mission? Su Huan shook his head, You don't need to. Just continue gathering materials. Have you extracted the pan energy crystal from this crab? Yes, Huan Xing nodded with her chin at the Tier 1 pan energy crystal on the table. Su Huan's face lit up with joy. Including this one, he had already obtained 3 Tier 1 pan energy crystals. 2 more would be enough to upgrade his LV2 pan energy conversion to LV3. Perfect timing, there was still a butcher and a ghost outside the car. Chapter 41 Sword and Shield. Su Huan directly pocketed the polymorphic crystal. In situations like this, concentrating resources on one person is more effective than dispersing them. There will be more zombies to extract later, but let's get the crabs out first. We might have a crab feast tonight. Su Huan sniffed the distinctive fishy smell of crabs in the air. Huan Xing picked out the tender meat from the crab claws and placed it on the table beside her, nodding. Almost done. This crab has been processed for a long time. Turning around, Liang Quan had already put on a work jacket and tactical boots, and was taking a riot shield from the wall. Su Huan rubbed his chin. I suggest you find the most comfortable weapon. This could very well affect your future skills and profession. Defenders are different from other evolved beings. Weapon specialization skills make up a large portion of their abilities. For example, a defender with a firepower talent, if you make them use melee weapons every day, they'll be doomed to evolve. In his previous life, Liang Quan became famous with a short stick, fierce and ruthless. Liang Quan weighed the riot shield in his hand, but didn't put it down. He then picked out a handy baton from the wall. He swung it twice in the air, producing a powerful whooshing sound. That's fine, Liang Quan said with a hint of regret. You want a firearm? No, I don't know how to use it. Then you can tell Yu Jing what kind of melee weapon you need later, and have her design one, then have Xiaoba make it for you. Su Huan put on an ice silk jacket. Liang Quan touched the two sides of the riot shield. I think this thing is very handy, but it would be better if the sides were a bit sharper. Su Huan raised an eyebrow. A sword and shield. An hour later, a dozen zombies pounded on the iron door of carriage number 2, making a loud banging sound, but apart from leaving a few bloody handprints, it had no effect. Suddenly, the iron black door opened inward. The zombies, who had been somewhat scattered, suddenly became interested and rushed forward to climb onto the train. Bang! A huge tactical boot kicked out. The foremost zombie's head was kicked off, sending it tumbling backward. A meter-long metal shield crashed down with a terrifying whooshing sound, accompanied by the crisp crack of a watermelon breaking. The three closest zombies all fell beneath the vehicle. A burly figure emerged from the truck. Even through his coat, one could sense his massive muscles and imposing aura. His short hair was like steel needles, and his beard clung to his cheeks like armor. He twisted his neck, brandishing a shield that resembled a giant axe, and charged down. Bang bang bang, a series of rapid thuds mingled with the low growls of zombies. A young man with rosy lips and white teeth stepped out, squinting at the sky, and remarked, "The weather's really nice today, perfect for getting to work." A chilling aura emanated from him. The temperature of over 30 degrees Celsius couldn't penetrate his body. Although low temperatures wasted energy, temperatures over 30 degrees would severely impact his reflexes and physical condition, making saving that little bit of energy a waste. Su Huan jumped out of the car, and Xiaoba's wheelchair floated up behind him and slowly landed. Looking at Liang Quan, who was surrounded by more and more zombies in the distance, Xiaoba's eyes showed worry. Really, don't we need to help? Su Huan glanced at him. Of course, no. If Lao Liang gets killed, who's driving? While the two were talking, Liang Quan had already rushed far ahead, single-handedly fighting off dozens of ordinary zombies. Although his fighting style was fierce and aggressive, zombies weren't afraid of pain. As long as they weren't crippled immediately, they would always get back up. Each zombie weighed at least 130 or 140 pounds, and even with Liang Quan's superhuman strength, he was starting to tire after killing more than a dozen. Poof! A sharp spike suddenly extended from the metal shield, helping Liang Quan pierce and kill one of the attackers. A commotion came from behind, and many zombies that had been left behind caught up, while many mangled bodies under the car were also struggling to crawl out. Su Huan snapped his fingers, attracting Xiaoba's attention. I'll go over to Liang Quan's side. You clear out the zombies behind us, then set up temporary defenses. We're getting off here today. Okay. Xiaoba nodded heavily, a rich metallic glint in his eyes. The next instant, the triangular metal strip on the side of the armed train seemed to erupt, suddenly extending over 3 meters of metal surface. Like a giant knife, it directly shredded more than a dozen zombies. Su Huan shook his head and muttered, incredibly fierce. Xiaoba's combat power was almost at the first tier. If they were on the train, he could easily kill all the first-tier zombies with just his level 1 metal control. Su Huan walked forward, high-temperature grenades reaping the zombies at his feet that couldn't get up due to broken bones. Ahead, bones were broken and tendons were torn, blood splattered everywhere. Here, there was only a faint smell of burning. When he reached Liang Quan's side, he simply stopped pretending. Without even raising his hand, high-temperature grenades flew out from his exposed skin in all directions. Ordinary zombies were easily reaped in swathes. Currently, his energy conversion efficiency is 20%, meaning he can save half the energy with the same high-temperature bomb. In addition, he's been absorbing energy crystals recently, resulting in a significant increase in his internal energy. Killing all these zombies is more than enough. Liang Quan stood with his shield, looking at the zombies falling like weed around him, a hint of awe flashing in his eyes. How did you feel about the battle just now? Su Huan asked casually. Liang Quan hesitated for a moment. It felt great, but not enough. Su Huan raised an eyebrow. Then I'll find you some more exciting opponents. Let's go. Liang Quan quickly followed. The two walked forward along the railway tracks. Yu had previously estimated there was a train about 500 meters ahead. The acceleration and braking just now took at least 300 meters, so the train should be nearby. They needed to clear it in advance, otherwise, it would block the way, and the armed train couldn't move. After making a sharp turn, they indeed saw the train ahead. Various scattered debris and corpses were around, many gnawed to pieces, no longer even having the chance to become zombies. Scattered zombies surged in. Su Huan patted Liang Quan's blood-stained shoulder, making a sticky gurgling sound, and a wicked, double-edged smile appeared on his face. Go have some fun. Liang Quan's face twitched, and he grabbed his large shield and charged forward. Su Huan followed behind him, leisurely observing every detail. Occasionally, he would use a high-temperature bullet to alleviate the opponent's danger. As a result, Liang Quan fought more and more smoothly, and simply abandoned the shield's defensive function, using it directly as a large axe. Su Huan then devoted some of his attention to helping him cover any gaps in his defense. The two of them directly fought their way to the side of the train, requesting monthly votes, requesting follow-up reading. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Liang Quan's Awakening. Su Huan glanced at the streamlined carriage, predominantly white with light blue gradient stripes, looking much more futuristic than the wasteland-modified aesthetics of the armored train. It was estimated to be a little over 4 meters tall, though each carriage was noticeably longer than the old green ones. He casually tossed out a few high-temperature grenades, giving Liang Quan a moment to catch his breath. Fighting with a shield in temperatures exceeding 30 degrees Celsius was clearly a life-threatening task. Is this an electric train? Su Huan asked, tapping the exterior with his fingers. Liang Quan wiped the sweat from his beard, panting heavily. A hydrogen-powered train, aluminum alloy exterior, moisture-proof and waterproof. He then raised his shield and slammed it at the zombies ahead. Hydrogen energy. This was somewhat unexpected for Su Huan, but his eyes lit up when he heard about the moisture-proof and waterproof features. They were going into an acid rain zone, so the entire train needed to be waterproof and sealed. Can you drive it? Yes, I know a little. Without hydrogen energy, will this train be unable to run? Su Huan asked leisurely. Liang Quan shook his increasingly confused mind, pausing for a few seconds before finally finding the answer in his memory. This train has a kinetic energy recovery design, the efficiency. Liang Quan swung his shield horizontally, knocking two zombies to the ground. I've heard the efficiency is between 20% and 40%. Liang Quan walked over and opened the train door, which seemed to be stuck, with a suitcase blocking it. Holding the shield in his right hand, he used his left to pull open the jammed door. Completely unaware that Su Huan behind him had his full attention focused on him. The moment the train door opened, a thick, pungent stench of blood mixed with the acrid smell of fermenting flesh assaulted his nostrils. A primal shiver made his scalp tingle. His head snapped back. A sharp claw grazed his Adam's apple, the razor-sharp air scraping fine beads of blood from his skin. His pupils contracted sharply. A night demon was hanging upside down from the narrow roof, its dagger-like claws embedded like steel nails into the roof lining. Its crimson compound eyes under its armpits split into 18 bloody lines in the darkness. You're asking for death? The hairs on the back of Liang Quan's neck stood on end. His brush with death had completely ignited his ferocity. His thick calf stepped onto the pedals, and he plunged into the train. Su Huan, standing behind, withdrew his right hand, which had been hovering in midair, a smirk playing on his lips, and followed him onto the train. He closed the door behind him. But as soon as he stepped on, he saw the night demon's claws piercing Liang Quan's left chest, and his brow furrowed in shock. He was about to step forward when he instinctively activated his omniscient perception, abruptly stopping in his tracks. After a moment's thought, a cold blue current shot out from the side wall, silently striking the night demon's foot. The night demon's fluid movements abruptly froze. Armored train, carriage number 20. Passengers were all getting up and silently gathering their belongings. Each time the train stopped, they had to be prepared to disembark and collect supplies, or even make a run for it. No one would leave their belongings on the train. Because it was so stuffy, there was little conversation, only rustling sounds. Su Huan just went out, the scarred man said softly, observing the scene outside. Temporarily, but I feel he'll probably go out again, the old man said cautiously. Because of the sweltering weather, his suit was soaked with sweat countless times, sticky and tight, and his once sharp silver hair was greasy and plastered to his scalp. He no longer looked like the important figure he once was, he looked more like a down-on-his-luck old beggar. Only his calm eyes hinted at an unusual aura. Mojiang City should have what he needs, and this trip out is our last chance. What do you mean? The scarred man's face twitched. He already knew we were here. Do you think he'll spare us just because Gao Zhe is dead? Sooner or later, even if Su Huan doesn't kill us outright, how many more searches will you survive? We're all old passengers, you know how quickly new people replace the old on this train. The old man's gaze was calm, but his words were ruthless, shattering the scarred man's ostrich-like illusions. The scarred man's face was so dark it seemed to drip water. He glanced at his two henchmen who weren't showing themselves, and gritted his teeth, asking, "What should we do?" Boom boom boom, it was as if two ferocious beasts had entered the train. Their sharp claws and shields, like axes and knives, tore the interior to shreds. A sharp pain in his left shoulder caused bloodshot veins to appear in Lion Quan's eyes. But the fire within his body burned even hotter, as if it would melt him. He simply tore off his clothes, revealing his bulging arms and muscular physique, veins bulging like purple snakes coiling around his limbs. The intense heat inside the vehicle made him feel like he was in a metal can. His senses were completely blank, like a can on a flame, his brain bubbling and churning. He had long forgotten Su Huan behind him, even forgotten why he had come up there in the first place. Only one thought remained in his mind: tear this damned can apart. Roar! The serrated edge of the shield dug fiercely into the metal roof, his already muscular chest swelled even more, his shoulders and back like sandbags on a battlefield. With a tearing sound like muscle fibers snapping, he ripped the entire metal roof apart. In the instant Su Huan's eyelids twitched wildly, the night demon's claws pierced his abdomen again. Die, you son of a bitch! He bit down on the gushing blood, his once gentle face now contorted with savagery and madness. He was like a skinned beast, covered in blood yet fighting with increasing ferocity, the edge of the shield scraping against the metal walls of the vehicle, leaving a trail of sparks, as he slammed the night demon into the wreckage. The leather and steel frame cracked under the immense force. A size 44 foot slammed into the night demon's chest, the entire carriage creaking and groaning. Die! The right-hand shield flipped, slamming down towards the night demon's head. Boom! Thick brain matter gushed outwards from the shield's surface, and Lion Quan instantly felt as if countless shards of glass were shattering in his blood vessels. It was like being in the northern spring, hearing the crisp sound of ice and snow cracking everywhere. It's done. Su Huan looked at Lion Quan, who was evolving, his eyes filled with joy. Suddenly, blue electricity burst forth from beneath his feet. A black shadow beside him froze against the wall. It was another Tier 1 night demon. Su Huan stepped forward, placed his palm on the night demon's head, and with a burst of high-temperature energy, the head was instantly incinerated to ashes. The night demon, having lost its support, collapsed to the ground. Su Huan glanced at his palm and muttered, "Little brat, you really thought I couldn't take you down?" Standing rooted to the spot, Lian Quan's muscles clenched like steel cables, the pierced wounds visibly healing, turning into tender red scars. With a clang, the shield fell to the ground. Awakening, Lian Quan looked down at his body, now twice its normal size. With the slightest movement, the purplish-red veins beneath his skin writhed like living snakes. He raised his hand in a daze, clenching his fist, his knuckles cracking like popping beans. Looking at the chaotic carriage around him and the torn sky above, though he retained some memories, he still couldn't quite believe he had done it. As if remembering something, he instinctively turned to look at Su Huan. Hesitantly, he asked, "This? I did this?" Su Huan gave him a thumbs up, as fierce as a war god. Chapter 43 Kinetic Energy Recovery. The stench of decay mixed with the smell of blood that had accumulated in the carriage dissipated from overhead. Su Huan raised his hand to shield his eyes from the glaring sunlight. How does the evolution feel? Liang Quan subconsciously touched his left shoulder. I've gained something new in my head. I'm a defender, and my current skills are level 1 combat factor and level 1 shield mastery. Su Huan was about to nod when he realized what he meant and raised an eyebrow in surprise. 2 skills? You've used a shield before, a melee weapon? My uncle taught me a little about it when I was little, but I'd forgotten most of it. No wonder. Su Huan narrowed his eyes. But in that case, Liang Quan's career path would have to be replanned. He had originally planned to assign Liang Quan a firepower or gunner master class. Now he hadn't expected him to be a shield warrior, a less popular class. Melee weapons actually have higher growth potential in the later stages. But that was still early. Su Huan walked towards the front carriage, with Liang Quan following behind, carrying his slightly deformed sword and shield. By the way, does the train have a device similar to a handbrake? Su Huan used the high temperature to melt the lock cylinder leading to the next carriage and casually asked as he pushed open the door. Liang Quan paused for a moment. Of course, a train this big must have a braking device. Like our old-fashioned ones, it's usually next to the wheels, on the bottom of each carriage. You have to operate it one by one, and I'm afraid I won't have time in case of an accident, so I never lock it. This carriage was very clean, but looking at the scattered suitcases, it seemed that people had run out during an accident. Su Huan examined the interior structure of the train. What about this hydrogen-powered train? It should be an air spring parking brake, something like that. I don't quite understand the specific principle, but most high-speed trains are like that. After depressurization, it locks up. Liang Quan answered uncertainly. Su Huan tried to directly inject energy into the train's engine under his feet, but it didn't work. The train seemed to be firmly nailed to the ground. This meant that every time he encountered a train blocking the track like this, he would have to get off and drive it away or derail it. He couldn't directly use energy to propel it. It was quite troublesome. As the two walked forward, inspecting the damage to the hydrogen-powered train, Liang Quan explained some basic train knowledge to him. By the time they reached the driver's cab, Su Huan had a basic understanding of the train beneath him. The hydrogen-powered carriage was 34.8 meters long, 2.7 meters wide, and 4.28 meters high, with an internal height of 2.1 meters. It was longer and narrower than the old-fashioned green carriages, and shorter than the older carriages equipped with air conditioning. As for his 2 main concerns, first, whether it could be powered by energy, okay. Second, whether it had kinetic energy carriages, no. However, this train's power system used a distributed design. Each carriage had fuel cells and lithium batteries on its roof and chassis, with 2 carriages sharing a single power system. In other words, every 2 carriages could be considered an independent train. There were 12 carriages in total. After removing 4 that were too severely damaged, Su Huan could obtain 8 carriages. This was equivalent to 4 independently operating locomotives. By dismantling them all and incorporating them into existing armed trains, the power shortage problem would be solved. Although he couldn't obtain hydrogen energy, the hydrogen-powered train had kinetic energy recovery capabilities, converting kinetic energy into electrical energy stored in batteries, which could be attached to the train for normal operation. With these 8 carriages, the train's electricity and fuel consumption could be further reduced. Su Huan only considered himself as the core energy source for the train in its later stages, not as a personal power bank. The train wouldn't be able to function without him. As for the arrangement, a set of carriages would definitely be needed at the rear, so reversing wouldn't be so slow and it could move faster in case of emergencies. A carriage could be added in front of the dining car and the sightseeing carriages, but these carriages had to be added in pairs, not separated. Furthermore, the dining car currently served as a meeting room for the team, gathering a large number of people, so it couldn't be too far back. If a carriage were to be added, it would be behind the sightseeing carriages. That would require moving carriage number 3, his private space, to the front. After considering it carefully, Su Huan said, "Let's start the train now. Disassemble both a hydrogen-powered train and the armored train." The order would be, locomotive, carriage number 3, dining car, sightseeing car, 2 hydrogen-powered carriages, food storage car, and 1 luggage car. Move all the previous armored carriages to the back. Of the remaining 6 carriages, Put 4 at the end, and arrange the other 2 as you see fit. The luggage car is about the same size as the passenger carriages, but it has no windows, only some ventilation openings, and an additional double door about 2.5 meters wide x 2.2 meters high. It's placed behind the food storage car, firstly to separate passengers, and secondly to provide Yujing with a workshop. There will be more and more mechanical modifications needed in the future. Constantly tinkering in her own room isn't a long-term solution. Liang Quan rubbed his stubble. There are plenty of tracks, enough to manage, but it'll take me a lot of time by myself. Just get the carriages arranged for me today. Understood. After assessing their location, they were about 3 kilometers from the south station, so the 2 of them reversed the hydrogen-powered train. Kizioba built a large steel plate about 10 meters behind the armored train, cutting off the railway to prevent sudden zombie hordes. Some of the workers were also lowered down. Yujing was directing them to clean the locomotive and remove the 2.5-meter-long butcher from the ram. Watching the train reverse, everyone stopped their work and crouched warily beside the doors. Su Huan crawled out of the rear carriage and jumped to the ground. He glanced at the skeleton the butcher was carrying. His pan-energy perception fluctuated, only sensing a faint remnant of pan-energy from the zombie. It must have been dead for too long, with severe pan-energy loss, making it impossible to extract crystals. Otherwise, we could earn 1 more. Looking up at Yujing, who was carrying a sniper crossbow, he asked, "How is the water tank design?" "I plan a modular design. Even if the carriages are switched, the water purifier can be connected to every water tank. And each carriage will have its own high-pressure water gun." Su Huan's eyes lit up slightly. Modular design, independent high-pressure water guns, that's a good idea. How long will it take to implement? Yujing picked up her notebook and started scribbling, frowning. The design isn't complicated, the main problem is the high-pressure nozzles. It takes Zioba a long time to make one. Don't worry about the nozzles for now. Liang Quan will reorganize the carriages later. Just preset the water pipes inside the first few carriages, Su Huan said after thinking for a moment. There might not be suitable water guns elsewhere, but fire trucks definitely have them, and they're definitely reliable. Yujing looked up at the futuristic hydrogen-powered train. Do the carriages need to be rearranged? Yes, we've also arranged a separate workshop for you. You'll move too. Su Huan counted on his fingers, still carriage number 4. Your original armored carriages will be at the back. From now on, the first 10 carriages are all our own. The material of the new carriages doesn't seem to be very impact-resistant. Su Huan rubbed his temples and said solemnly, "They're made of lightweight aluminum alloy, so your most important task today is to reattach steel plates to these 2 carriages. And it can't compromise their airtight and moisture-proof properties." Chapter 44 River Crab and Tofu Casserole. Liang Quan stopped the train and first carried the 2 night demons off the carriage. After evolving, his strength had increased significantly, and he could easily lift one of these skinny creatures in each hand. Lifting the headless night demon, a large charred patch was visible on its iron-gray skin. It was undoubtedly struck by Su Huan's high-voltage electricity. However, when he pulled up the night demon he had killed, he was surprised to find charred marks on its body as well. Liang Quan remained silent for a moment before carrying the 2 corpses out. He saw passengers disembarking from the back carriages, with Su Huan standing there smiling, holding a roster, like the king of hell checking attendance. When his name was called as he passed by, Liang Quan couldn't help but tense up. Su Huan raised an eyebrow. "Collect as many of the corpses from the front as possible later. Have Wanxing collect them. If there are too many, discard them according to their value." Understood. Watching Liang Quan carry the 2 night demon corpses onto the train, Su Huan continued checking the roster. Now that everyone on the team has become an evolved being, they can share some of the burden, at least they can keep watch on the train when he's not around. Looking at the scorching sun, he realized that after standing for only 10 minutes, his back ached from the heat. The passengers before him seemed listless, but compared to the refugees he'd seen on the overpass, they were much better off. Su Huan kept calculating their food supplies and adjusting ticket prices to prevent some from losing their motivation to search for supplies and running out of food. They had limited food left, and many were already starving. There was still much to do today. Getting them out to find food as soon as possible was the priority. Su Huan fanned the roster, sending up waves of heat. Same as always, 3 supplies, a special ticket, And a new passenger. A slight commotion arose among the crowd. A scarred man nearby asked, "Can we skip the supplies if we bring in a new passenger?" Su Huan smiled. "Yes, one new passenger counts as 1.5 supplies. 2 passengers are free. Anyone who brings back steel plates is also free." But the crowd's expressions hardened at the coldness in Su Huan's words, and they listened intently. "I only need passengers between 16 and 50 years old. I'll open an opening in the side railing for you later. Get ready to depart." Su Huan finished speaking and quickly boarded the carriage. Protecting Lion Quan had completely depleted his energy, even requiring some energy crystals to replenish it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be drenched in sweat from the sun. He still needed to personally search for fire trucks and replenish his energy as soon as possible. It wasn't that he didn't want to send people, but he was currently short-handed. As for the passengers behind, will those troublemakers choose to shoot the zombies first or take him out first when they get the guns? He'll have to figure it out himself. Before even reaching the dining car, Su Huan heard a soft humming. "Life's scenery is ever-changing. Whenever I look back in loneliness, your love is always waiting for me not far away." Voiceover. It carried a relaxed, gentle quality, like the warm breeze outside the car, hitting his body, swirling around, and continuing to flow. The voice flew freely and soothingly into the distance, leaving him stunned in place. But she seemed to have noticed something, abruptly stopping at the climax. A rich, savory aroma wafted from the carriage, like the runny yolk of a salted duck egg. Su Huan stepped into the dining car. On the central table was a plate, weighed down by a heavy object. Yu, wearing an apron, stood behind the cabinet, her ginger yellow shirt replaced by a white t-shirt, and her lower body clad in off-white wide-leg silk pants. She looked both homely and soft. A large clay pot was simmering on the induction cooker, emanating a delicious aroma. Just as Su Huan entered, Yu deftly put down what she was holding, took an empty glass filled with ice from the refrigerator, poured in half a bottle of cola, and handed it to him. Su Huan took it, took a sip, and asked, "Where did you get this clay pot?" He knew exactly what was in the kitchen. "I found it in the luggage compartment. It's a brand new pot, never been used. I was thinking of making river crab stew with tofu tonight." Yu placed her hands in front of her, her shapely legs pressed together without a gap, perfectly poised, like a maid answering a master's question. "Tofu?" Su Huan glanced at the contents of the basin on the table, his eyes darkening. His aunt knew quite a lot. "It's braised tofu, made this morning. We can have it tonight." "And clothes?" "Yes. Do you have any for me?" Looking at the young man with his slender, sharp features, a flicker of surprise crossed Yu's almond-shaped eyes. This person can be cold and cruel like a demon one moment, and like a child begging for candy the next. The transitions are incredibly smooth, making him elusive. "I collected some, and I put them in my room," Yu said, secretly glancing at Su Huan's expression. Su Huan's face was slightly cold. "If I don't ask, you're not going to give them to me, are you?" "And no, I'll bring them to your room after I finish cooking," Yu said weakly. Seeing her timid appearance, Su Huan felt much better. He snorted softly, picked up his iced cola, and sat on the orange cat sofa, silently absorbing the energy crystals to restore his energy. After a while, Su Huan sensed something was wrong. He frowned and opened his eyes. He looked suspiciously at the woman bustling around. There was a kitchen knife and a cutting board, but why was there no sound? The bubbling of the casserole, the hum of the air conditioner, all those comforting sounds of daily life were gone. Soon, Yu froze under his cold gaze, slowly turning around and smiling ingratiatingly. "I was afraid the sound of cooking would disturb you." Su Huan's face twitched. "Don't block my senses anymore." Silence reigned all around. How could he dare close his eyes? In an instant, all sorts of chaotic sounds returned, and Su Huan breathed a sigh of relief. Without these sounds, he lost his sense of direction in the space. This was quite terrifying. Fortunately, Yu didn't cause any more trouble. An hour later, feeling the abundant energy within his body, Su Huan opened his eyes again. The midday sun was blindingly bright. Looking out through the squares cut from the explosion-proof netting, Liang Quan was driving the hydrogen-powered train slowly backward on the reflective tracks. A group of workers were moving pipes and metal plates. They were as hot as steamed shrimp, their skin a bright red, sweat splattering everywhere. He got up, stretched, drank the melted ice water in his cup in one gulp, and walked out of the train. Chapter 45 Doomsday Car Race? She paused briefly in carriage number 2. The crab on Wanzing's cutting board had transformed into a skullcutter in the butcher's hand. She was now using a chainsaw to cut a bone hammer in the skullcutter's hand. A buzzing sound accompanied the splattering of fine pieces of flesh and blood. Soon, a hammer fell to the ground. The latter put away the chainsaw, lifted its blood-stained mask, and smiled at Huan. But that smile was unsettling no matter how you looked at it. This girl's style seemed to be developing in an increasingly bizarre direction. However, this was the daily life of a gatherer. They dealt with strange corpses every day, zombies, plants, evolved beasts, and perhaps even evolved beings in the future. Their career plans weren't in a rush. He hadn't even reached Tier 1 yet. Huan walked to a corner where a silver motorcycle was parked, like a crouching metal beast. It hadn't been used since it was repaired. He planned to go out alone today, and this H2 was the best means of transportation. The supercharger roared through the cabin, accompanied by the whine of the 4 cylinders. The idling car vibrated slightly. Huan felt like he'd forgotten something. What had he forgotten? He quickly checked, muttering to himself, items carried. 1 Tier 1 Universal Energy Crystal, 3 Ordinary Universal Energy Crystals, logbook. Purpose of this trip: retrieve firearms from the fire truck. Travelers, Huan. Anything else? Nothing. Okay, that's good. He gave Wanzing an okay look, and she lowered the deck on the side of the sightseeing cabin. As the hydraulic support slowly descended, a silver beast roared out. It passed over the busy crowd and charged straight towards the gap in the fence. Wang Hai pushed up his glasses, wiped the oily sweat from his nose, and glanced at the 3i quartz watch on his left wrist. The date had jumped to 21. He had been surviving in this small supermarket for 2 weeks. As a highly qualified individual, Wang Hai knew he was hopeless. Or rather, expecting rescue was impossible. He huddled in the triangle formed by the toy shelf and piles of adult diapers, finding a little more security in these soft things. Suddenly, the row of empty cans at the stairwell rattled. Wang Hai's heart leaped. It's the wind, the young man huddled behind the checkout counter mumbled. He was using a utility knife to whittle a mop handle, sawdust falling like snowflakes onto the welcome carpet. Besides the 2 of them, there were 2 other men in the supermarket, customers who had shopped with him and were now trapped here by the apocalypse. If we stay here like this, we're all going to die sooner or later. Wang Hai licked his cracked lips, tasting the metallic flavor. He picked up the bottled water beside him and took another sip. Fortunately, he was hiding in the supermarket, and the supplies here were keeping him relatively comfortable for now. But like a dog locked in a cage, not knowing when its owner would return, watching the sunrise and sunset, he was gradually sliding into despair. The young man didn't respond. Over the course of more than 10 days, they talked a great deal, from their hometowns and professions to the philosophy of life, the universe, and even their own deaths. Eventually, they ran out of things to say. Wang Hai looked into the crack of the nailed-up window. A dandelion was swaying. Just over 10 days ago, when he had nailed the last plank in. This plant was merely a green sprout in the concrete crack. Now, its fluff was a golden hue from the sunlight. He wanted to continue talking, but the boy suddenly raised a sharpened stick. SHH. A viscous, watery footstep came from downstairs. Wang Hai gripped the fire axe beside him, glancing at a box of gold leaf chocolates on the shelf, its ribbon knot gleaming matte in the dust. The young man gave him a look. The zombies are here again. Wang Hai shrank back into his diaper. After all, there was a metal door on the 2nd floor that the zombies couldn't open. Bang! A violent sound, accompanied by a metallic distorted tone, startled Wang Hai. He yanked the diaper off his face, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the iron door. There, he saw a huge bulge, as if it had been violently struck by some terrifying behemoth. Bang! The explosive sound sent white powder flying from around the door frame. The noise startled the 4 people inside the supermarket. 2 of them fled deeper into the aisles, leaving Wang Hai and the young man standing at the counter. Wang Hai rushed towards the young man, but perhaps the noise had alerted the monster outside, because the impacts became more frequent and violent. The thin metal door gradually warped under the violence. Wang Hai, crouching behind the counter, peered at the side of the metal door. Behind the bent door, a large patch of iron-gray skin was visible, and a massive, giant-like foot slammed into the iron door. A zombie's head squeezed through the bent gap, its scarlet eyes meeting Wang Hai's gaze. Roar! Wang Hai's sallow face instantly turned deathly pale. The next moment, the head was smashed open by a metal road sign. The blood-stained words Yunnan Road were stuck in the metal door. The butcher roughly pulled it out, yanked aside the ordinary zombies at his feet, and peered through the crack in the door, a sinister smile on his fat face. Wang Hai covered his mouth, his body slowly sliding back behind the counter. The muscles in his face had long since lost control of the power of fear, his features contorted in a grotesque display. Boom! The metal door was kicked open completely, knocking over several shelves. The butcher's towering 2.5-meter frame squeezed into the small supermarket. His heavy breathing sounded like a blast of air, hitting the walls and gradually bouncing back, echoing in layers. Wang Hai didn't know why his damn heart was still pounding. Even a heart attack would have made his death easier. The only thing that gave him a sense of security now was the young man beside him, whose face was also deathly pale. At least he'd have company on his journey to the underworld. Lost in thought, Wang Hai suddenly heard some strange sounds. Like the roar of a motorcycle that used to wake him up in the middle of the night. That kind of ferocious roar, approaching from afar, seemed to curse him to crash and die in the next second. Boom boom boom, the sound grew closer, and Wang Hai's face lit up with uncontrollable joy. That once hated sound had become so endearing, he almost wanted to hug the rider and kiss him hard. Even though the other person was the most despised guy, the blonde-haired ghost with a wildfire. But a question immediately arose. It's the end of the world, who is so arrogant, speeding recklessly on the road on a motorcycle? Su Huan, who was driving dangerously, felt a tickle in his nose. But the excitement in his eyes was hard to suppress. At first, he had some hesitation, but after shaking off 6 night demons and making 2 bloodhounds vomit, he had grown to love the wild horse beneath him. Chapter 46 The Three Brothers. Was Su Huan afraid of death? Undoubtedly, he was extremely afraid. Otherwise, he wouldn't have considered building an iron shell to hide inside. But like genes that become restless and unstable due to constant evolution in the face of the apocalypse, madness was etched into everyone's very being. Caution and madness, chaos and order intertwined within each individual. Just as Su Huan cherished the fleeting moments of peace amidst the clattering sounds of the kitchen in the afternoon, he also craved the thrill of riding his motorcycle at 120 kilometers per hour on the roof, the wind howling past his ears. He always believed he had preserved his humanity well. He kept a journal, paid attention to time, loved good food, remained optimistic, and talked to himself when there was no one else to talk to. But when the engine roared, and that uncontrollable itch welled up in his bones, he realized he might have already gone mad. Mad in some endless acid rain, amidst a cold pile of corpses. Or perhaps, maybe in some soft body. Who knows? Bang! Another butcher emerged from the street, his tall frame carrying a road sign. Watching the steel pipe swung down from midair, even a mere touch could turn him into mincemeat. He didn't stop his wild thoughts, a morbid smile still playing on his lips. I'm in a hurry. Feeling the wind pressure from the road sign, Su Huan twisted the throttle to the floor, accelerating instead of retreating. The supercharger roared, a sound more terrifying than a corpse's howl, and the speed surged again. The silver motorcycle, like a bolt of lightning, crashed into the hood of the car in front, using the slope as a springboard to leap high into the air. It perfectly dodged the road sign in the butcher's hand. Boom! The road sign slammed into the hood of the car, instantly denting it like a cookie box. The butcher looked down with a sinister smile. Huh? Nothing. A hint of human surprise appeared on his fat face. He laboriously turned his head and saw the silver rat already running further and further away on the roof of the car. The butcher roared and dragged the road sign backwards as he chased after it. If only time hadn't been so tight. Su Huan wanted to praise the butcher's aesthetic sense. He always thought road signs were the most suitable weapon for a butcher, both in terms of length and the feel of striking them. However, Su Huan didn't have high hopes for the butcher choosing to chase him. If it were an agile creature like a night demon or a bloodhound, they might be able to catch him, but the butcher was out of the question. That 2-meter-tall body wouldn't be much faster than an 80-year-old woman. Inside the fire truck, 3 people sat silently in the truck bed. The floor was cooler than the chairs. They had been busy for several days before finally finding a chance to climb onto this fire truck, planning to rest for a bit before driving off. A deep voice sounded from the far left. I'm going out to use the restroom. I advise you not to go out. If you get bitten by a zombie, even if you're my brother, I won't open the door for you. Stop talking nonsense. Why don't you try to persuade the zombies not to bite me? The man retorted irritably, but didn't get out immediately. Instead, he cautiously opened the window and glanced outside. A buzzing sound approached from afar. The sound entered the carriage, and the three men froze, scrambling to their feet and peeking out the window. A silver motorcycle sped towards them from afar. They exchanged bewildered glances. The second brother exclaimed, "It's a living person." The third brother, needing to pee, retorted irritably, "Nonsense, zombies can't ride bikes." The second brother added, "I thought everyone outside was dead." The eldest brother rubbed his face with the hem of his short-sleeved shirt, his voice fierce, "If he's just passing by, ignore him. If he's trying to steal something, take him down. Let's go get our weapons." Huan consistently chose to walk in the middle of the road. Night demons, these zombies, preferred to lurk in dark places. The intense sunlight would make their eyes uncomfortable. With his all-around perception at maximum, Huan checked the direction on the roof of an SUV. Several bright red fire trucks were parked in the middle of the street, completely immobile. He twisted the throttle, slid off the vehicle, and smashed a zombie cocoon on the roadside in the process. Before the evolving zombie inside could react, the rear wheel slammed heavily onto him with a thud, like crushing a bug. Moving haphazardly through the gaps between vehicles, stopping and starting, and picking off a few more unsuspecting zombies, Huan finally reached the fire truck. Casually parking his motorcycle on someone else's roof, Huan jumped down and approached the fire truck. There were 3 fire trucks stranded on the street, representing 3 different types of situations. Water tanker fire trucks, for firefighting, typically carry water cannons, hoses, and large quantities of clean water. Ladder fire trucks, specifically designed for high-altitude rescues. Before the apocalypse, you could even find videos of water cannons shoving people back from jumping off buildings. Finally, there were rescue fire trucks, equipped with enclosed medical bays, independent power supply, and demolition tools. These 3 vehicles together formed an excellent survival fortress in the apocalypse. And their level of professionalism was definitely far superior to that of an armored train. If it weren't for the fact that the butcher and his ilk could evolve, Huan might have even considered forming a convoy. Just as he approached the driver's seat, Huan paused, then resumed his steady pace. He muttered to himself, "The windows aren't even closed, looks like they left in a hurry." As soon as he got close, 3 dark gun barrels emerged from the windows, and 3 strikingly similar heads huddled behind the door, staring coldly at him. The one in the middle asked grimly, "Brother, what are you doing?" Huan glanced at the metal cargo box, immediately raising his hands, his face showing embarrassment and fear. "Just an ordinary survivor, trying to find some supplies. Please, gentlemen, have mercy." The man's expression softened considerably. "Since you're just passing by, stay away. Don't bother with this vehicle." Huan frowned inwardly. At first, he only wanted the guns in the vehicle, but now he wanted both. How could he avoid being abducted? Just as he was about to make an excuse, he heard the man next to him curse, "That's all bullshit. There's a shop right across the street. If you want supplies, why are you squeezing into the middle of the road?" The other 2 immediately realized what was happening, opened the car door, looked around, and pulled Huan into the car. They didn't notice the relieved look on Huan's face. Inside the cramped car, Huan was pointed at by 3 guns. The difference was that the one asking the questions was the same hot-tempered man. The 3 looked very similar. If it weren't for their different clothes, he wouldn't have been able to tell them apart. "Are you from out of town or local?" "I escaped from the south on a train." The men exchanged glances, surprised that they had actually uncovered some information. There were even trains in the apocalypse. The guns in their hands instinctively lowered. The leader hurriedly asked, "What train? Is it a government-organized rescue?" Chapter 47. 4 brothers. Huan, sweat beading on his forehead, looked at the second brother's dangerous expression. "Big brother, at this hour, what public trains are there anymore? It's just a gang of thugs who hijacked the train, relying on their strength. And that's not all, they're forcing us ordinary passengers to get off and find food for them every day." "How many of you are there?" the second brother asked again. "Over 700. "How many are they?" 6 or 7, I guess." The 3 men's eyes widened. 6 or 7 people and they think they can intimidate hundreds of you?" Huan said helplessly, "Brothers, those are ruthless bandits. We're just ordinary folks, we've never seen anything like it. You didn't see it, one brother had his wife and daughter kidnapped. He just cursed a couple of times and was beaten to death. His daughter is a graduate student, so beautiful, with that tiny waist. And his wife, so sweet and voluptuous. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? Like you've actually touched them. Seeing how vivid Su Huan's story was, the third brother relaxed slightly and said disdainfully. The second brother cursed angrily, these people are scum. Su Huan readily agreed, cursing back, they're beasts. If we don't get the supplies back, they'll beat us, starve us, and make us work for free. The three exchanged glances. The second brother pointed his gun at Su Huan, while the other two turned away. As they turned, they revealed pistols at their waists. Su Huan narrowed his eyes, Enforcer S1 tactical pistol, a semi-automatic pistol, using 9mm ammunition, with a 15-round magazine. He might not be able to identify other guns, but he had the same model. He'd just left it on the truck because he was out of ammo. It seemed a man from his past life hadn't lied. There really was a batch of enforcement equipment in the fire truck, and quite a few at that. The eldest brother said in a low voice, I think this kid seems to be telling the truth. Should we let him go? The third brother retorted angrily, nonsense. We've already caught him, how can we let him go? The eldest brother asked in confusion, then what do you mean? The third brother stroked his chin and said in a deep voice, since they can drive a train, why can't we? And with so many people on the train, the supplies must be more than here. You can drive a train? What nonsense are you talking about? The three of us grew up together, don't you know whether I can drive a train or not? But if they can drive it away, there must be a driver on the train. If you ask me, we should go back with him, and then take down that group of people. Anyway, there are only 6 or 7 of them, and the 3 of us brothers have guns. If we succeed, we can drive the train straight out of Mojiang. The eldest brother hesitated, what about the fire truck? We've gone through so much trouble. Are you stupid? Fire trucks can't eat or drink, and with so many cars on the road, it's uncertain whether we can even get out. Anyway, you're the smartest of the 3 brothers, so we'll listen to you. The eldest brother said through gritted teeth. Su Huan glanced out the window, a few scattered zombies were already approaching. Slightly impatient, he kindly reminded them, brothers, my vehicle is still outside, it's quite nice. Do you want me to bring it over? The men looked at him. The third brother frowned. You better be honest, don't try to play tricks on me. Tell me the situation on the train properly. Brothers, go get his vehicle, we might need it. Soon, only the third brother remained in the carriage. Su Huan breathed a sigh of relief, clearly, they had begun to trust him. The third brother started asking for details, and Su Huan fabricated a story, 7 parts truth and 3 parts lies. After all, no one knew the situation on the armed train better than him. His story was interspersed with his fear of the apocalypse, and he tearfully cursed the train conductor for his exploitation. Each incident was based on his own experience. After cursing the conductor, he talked about his feelings. Although he wasn't particularly panicked now, he had been in a panic in his past life. Betrayal, separation from brothers, he could rattle off all sorts of human tragedies on his lips. Having witnessed them firsthand, his lamentations were genuinely heartfelt. Even the third brother felt a pang of sympathy. Although his fate wasn't as dire as Su Huan's, they had both experienced the apocalypse, sharing a similar plight, and he could empathize more deeply with Su Huan's apocalyptic tales. When the eldest and second eldest brothers, drenched in sweat, crawled up, they saw the third eldest brother lighting a cigarette for Su Huan while patting him on the shoulder and sighing, "Don't say anything, brother, I understand you. It's just a woman. As long as I have food to eat, you'll have food to eat too. If the 4 of us brothers work together, we'll definitely survive in this damn world." Seeing his 2 brothers staring in disbelief, the third eldest brother became agitated again. "What's wrong with you two? Call me 4th brother." The eldest and second eldest brothers? Su Huan wiped away his tears, went up and grasped their hands, sincerely calling out, "Big brother, second brother." Although the 2 were completely confused, they didn't have time to correct him, anxiously saying, "Never mind that, the zombies are coming outside." Zombies are coming? The third eldest brother was suddenly startled, wiping away a few drops of urine from his face and quickly looking out the window. He saw more and more zombies surrounding them. Among them were many first-level evolved zombies, especially the 2-meter tall butcher, Who is the most conspicuous? Obviously, he had been lured here by Su Huan's speeding car. They only ended up as a horde of zombies because they were running too slowly. Su Huan immediately jumped out and said, "Big brother, second brother, you two get in the other two cars quickly. I'll lead the way, let's rush out." The third brother also reacted, throwing his gun to Su Huan and immediately shouting, "Right, hurry up. I'll drive this car, fourth brother, you cover me. There's a box of bullets in the back." The group, their hearts pounding, followed Su Huan's decision and began to move. Su Huan touched the metal barrel of the assault rifle, feeling secretly delighted. He had to admit, he was starting to like these three brothers. He opened the magazine and saw a full 40 rounds of 7.62 ammunition, but they were different from pistol bullets. The bullets had a ring of green-silver paint on them, and he didn't know what it was for. But that didn't matter, he'd find out after firing a couple of shots. "Fourth brother, stop figuring it out, figure out which way to go," the third brother shouted hurriedly. With a click, Su Huan cocked his gun and exclaimed excitedly, "Just keep charging forward. I'll call you when we turn." The third brother gritted his teeth, "Bullshit. We might not even be able to break through. Don't worry, these cars only weigh a few tons, but the fire truck weighs over 10 tons, and the front is reinforced. Just crash into it. All right. Crash it." The fire truck started up, its engine roaring, and charged directly at the car in front. Its weight and powerful engine pushed the car aside. But the loud noise attracted a horde of zombies, who swarmed in from all directions. The ferocious howls of the zombies were terrifying. Roar! Several familiar rabid dogs charged from the roof of the truck. Su Huan opened the window and pulled the bolt. A wild grin spread across his face. Let's see who's the luckiest. Chapter 48 Armor-piercing bullets don't believe in carbon-based monsters. A crisp trigger clicked, and 3 bullets struck the fastest-running bloodhound. Bang! 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 The air seemed to freeze for a moment as the 3 high-explosive incendiary rounds bit into the bloodhound's exposed muscle. Then, the bullets exploded and disintegrated, tearing the bright red muscle into a cloud of blood mist, the incendiary propellant burning wildly along the muscle fibers. The bloodhound, as if drunk, slammed its forelegs heavily into the ground, crashing headfirst into a car door. Bang! Crash! The charred claw bones of the toes embedded themselves in the softened asphalt, the still-burning flames flowing through the cracks, and the clatter of spent cartridges hitting the ground made Su Huan's blood boil instantly. His eyes shone with a piercing light. The third brother driving beside him was also stunned by the effect. Holy crap! That's insane. 3 shots and it's done? Su Huan's lips curled into a wide grin. If he had had such a weapon in his past life, how could he have let these damned beasts force him into such a miserable state? No matter how powerful a Tier 1 zombie is, it's still just carbon-based flesh and blood. Even a Tier 2 zombie that has evolved corpse armor would have to run for its life in the face of human heavy firepower. Armor-piercing bullets never trust carbon-based monsters. Su Huan stuffed a Tier 1 energy crystal into his mouth, then poured the endless energy into the fire truck beneath his feet, roaring, "Accelerate! Accelerate!" The third brother slammed on the accelerator, and whether it was his imagination or not, he felt the car had even more power. Like a raging bull, it roared forward. Sports cars and SUVs all became toys, smashed to pieces. Su Huan aimed at the next bloodhound and fired another crisp 3-round burst. However, this time the shot hit the wrong spot. The bloodhound didn't die immediately, but crashed into the fire truck with a miserable howl. The broken wound looked like a rotten tomato, making the red paint even more vivid. Before it could even struggle, it was run over by the wheels. The car shook violently, and a tooth-grinding sound of bones breaking rang out, like popping bubble wrap. "Fourth brother, hurry, shoot that big one up ahead." The third brother leaned forward, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, shouting at the butcher directly ahead. "All right." Su Huan switched the firing mode to full automatic, half his body leaning out of the window, aiming the gun at the butcher carrying the road sign, one hand controlling the recoil, the other pulling the trigger. Instantly, a series of crisp clicks rang out. The muzzle flash formed a tongue of fire, licking the butcher's enormous belly. High explosive rounds tore through his skin, instantly forming a bright yellow-orange blood mist. More than 30 high explosive incendiary rounds ignited the butcher's massive belly, abruptly halting his advance. A furious howl came from within the flames. Su Huan ducked to avoid the bloodhounds lunging at him, quickly resupplying his ammunition. Although he had already killed 2 butchers since the apocalypse, that was thanks to the terrifying weight and kinetic energy of the armed train. It didn't mean that such things were truly weak. Among the many Tier 1 zombies, the butcher, though the slowest to react, had absolutely top-notch defense. Even the luckiest person couldn't kill this beast. Fourth brother, he's not dead, he's not dead. That guy's not dead. Stop yelling, I fucking know. Su Huan's forehead was sweating. If the butcher really got a hit, things would get really messed up. While frantically absorbing energy from the polymorphic crystal, he used both hands to load bullets into the magazine. Fourth brother, he's coming, he's going to smash it, damn it. I fucking know. Su Huan loaded over 30 bullets, knowing it was too late, he immediately shoved the magazine in, turned abruptly, his pupils shrinking sharply, damn it. Boom, a road sign was smashed directly into the front of the fire truck. Fortunately, the fire truck windows were double glazed, even with such a large hole punched through, the glass didn't shatter all over the truck, only forming a huge radial hole in front of him. Rat-a-tat-tat. A burst of rapid gunfire came from behind at the crucial moment. Immediately, the butcher burst into flames again, staggering backward. Su Huan stuck his gun through the hole in the glass and fired another burst at the butcher, yelling, "Second brother's already going all out, you fucking step on the gas." The third brother, red-faced and furious, slammed on the gas, yelling, "Bullshit, don't I know how to step on the gas?" The tires screeched on the sticky asphalt, roaring forward. Watching the butcher being left behind, the third brother slammed his fist on the steering wheel. That felt good. The two of them yelled simultaneously, then instinctively tugged at their collars, letting the sweat on their chests evaporate. Su Huan wiped his wet hair and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Although these 3 brothers were a bit silly, being with them felt like stepping back into past life for Su Huan. No plans, no goals, just being chased around by zombies by a few unreliable teammates, like a handful of sparks flying around aimlessly. Life burned intensely and hysterically. Without the butcher's obstruction, the road ahead was much easier. With Su Huan powering up the engine, no vehicle could stand in their way. The eldest and second eldest followed behind, even reaching speeds of 60 kilometers per hour. Occasionally, a foolish evolved beast or zombie would appear, and Su Huan would unleash a burst of fire. A horde of zombies was also cleared with a burst. Once an opening was made, the rest was simply crushed by the fully loaded fire trucks. The return journey was almost as fast as the way there. People in the buildings on both sides naturally noticed this rampaging convoy and shouted for help, but Su Huan, having achieved his goal, couldn't be bothered with them. The third eldest was in a state of heightened excitement and couldn't hear anything. Even Su Huan sitting next to him had to shout. Su Huan held his gun in one hand, leaning lazily against the car door, his eyes scanning the buildings on both sides. He was ready to fire at any moment any zombies that suddenly appeared to scare them. Suddenly, 2 figures rushed out from around the corner. Just as he was about to raise his gun, Su Huan suddenly froze, blurting out, "Motorcycle guy? Stop." "What?" The third brother's face turned ashen, his knuckles blew as he gripped the steering wheel. "I said stop," Su Huan roared. Without a second thought, the third brother slammed on the brakes. The life-or-death crisis they just faced was enough to forge a bond of trust between the 2 men. You could call this kind of friendship rough, but you couldn't doubt its sincerity. Wang Hai, having narrowly escaped the butcher's clutches, hesitated for a moment before deciding to leave. Although the supermarket had food and drink, the doors were damaged, and no one knew what terrifying creature might enter next. So, after discussing it with the young man, they slipped out. Fortunately, the supermarket zombies had been drawn away by the motorcycle, leaving the ground littered with blood and carcasses. The distant sounds of howling zombies and gunshots rang out. Just as the 2 were filled with fear and confusion, they suddenly saw 3 brightly colored fire trucks approaching. It felt like seeing Noah's Ark in a flood. Overjoyed to see the fire trucks stop, the 2 rushed over and pounded on the doors. Su Huan looked closely and saw that the leader was a man in his 30s, wearing small glasses and a light gray suit. However, due to long-term neglect, the cuffs of his suit were black and dirty, wrinkled and grimy. When he smiled, that sleazy air unique to intellectuals immediately came through. The man with glasses immediately pulled out a large pack of cigarettes from his pocket and threw it into the passenger seat. He pleaded, half crying and half laughing. Please, kind brothers, let me get in the car, let me get in the car, please. 8,000 words daily during the new book period. Brothers, I've made my attitude clear. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. Who is the train conductor? Although his face was much cleaner than in his previous life, Huan could still recognize the motorcycle slacker at a glance. The beat-up bike he'd modified for him required 12 major repairs and 36 minor ones a month. It was repaired more frequently than his fingernails. Because of this same bike, the two had been dealing with each other for a year, practically becoming close friends. But Huan still confirmed, "What's your name?" "Wang Hai, you can just call him La Wang," the bespectacled man quickly replied. Huan couldn't help but smirk, opened the back door, and said rudely, "Get in." But the two men didn't hold a grudge against his tone, their faces were filled with pure gratitude. The third brother, standing to the side, looked somewhat bewildered. "Are these two your friends?" "I don't know them." The third brother shifted gears, his face even more puzzled. "Then why did you let them on in the first place?" Huan coaxed, "There are 6 or 7 of them. If we only have 4, doesn't it seem like we're at a disadvantage? We have guns. But we need to sleep too. How can 4 people keep an eye on hundreds of people behind us? We rescue these 2, and since they don't know the people on the train well, they'll definitely be friendly with us. They might help us if something happens, right?" Huan said we 4 times in one breath. The third brother listened, his thoughts becoming clearer. He exclaimed, "Cultivating trusted confidence and controlling more people, that's a great idea. The eldest always says I have too many bad ideas, but I think you're the one with the most wicked schemes." Huan's eyes twitched. He opened his mouth, unsure what to say, before finally managing to utter, "I'll take that as a compliment. This idiot." The latter half of the journey was relatively uneventful. Although there were some clueless zombies, high-explosive incendiary bombs treated every flesh and blood monster equally. Huan even managed to pick up a bloodhound. Cats and dogs were the most common large animals in the city. Although birds and insects were even more numerous, the number of mutated ones was very small. He guessed it was because their size prevented them from absorbing too much generalized energy. While energy and physical strength weren't directly proportional, to carry more energy, one needed a stronger body. By the time the fire trucks returned to the train, the sun was already setting. The 3 blood-stained fire trucks quickly attracted everyone's attention, especially the one at the front with the road sign embedded in it. The engine vibrated slightly, and the 3 trains drove into the gap in the fence one after another. Fearing unnecessary trouble, Huan jumped off beforehand. The 3 brothers and Wang Hai followed closely behind. The youngest brother cautiously looked around, and upon seeing the train, he trusted Huan even more. The eldest brother exclaimed in surprise, "There are quite a lot of people here." Passengers returning from the area, seeing Huan leading the way, immediately scattered to the sides, and those in front repeatedly turned back to avoid the road. The second brother cautiously nudged the third brother with his elbow and whispered, "Why do these people seem so afraid of the fourth brother?" The third brother glared at him and said irritably, "Don't talk nonsense. Look at what you're holding, how can they not be afraid?" Huan, walking in front, smiled without saying a word. Soon they saw Yujing directing workers to move steel plates in the sweltering heat. Before she could speak, Huan said first, "The train conductor is back." He greeted her in a flat tone. Yujing looked at the smiling Huan, feeling a little strange, unsure how to respond, so she gave a non-committal. The greeting sounded like a statement to Yujing, but to the 3 brothers it was a question. They had learned their lesson, the train conductor was inside. Watching Huan casually lead them into the train, the third brother, a little nervous, quietly tugged at Huan's arm and said urgently, "Fourth brother, are we just going to go in like this?" Huan rubbed his chin. "Yeah, what else? Don't we need a plan?" "Like what?" "We'll split up, go in and take control of the conductor, then one of us will incite the exploited passengers, and then we'll force the conductor and his cronies out." Huan asked curiously, "Why do we do that?" "To occupy the moral high ground. You're young and don't understand. If we just kill the conductor, won't we become new bandits?" But if we drag him out, and you lead the charge in condemning that bastard in front of everyone, it'll help you get revenge and also win public support. Think about it, doesn't that make sense? The third brother clapped his hands, his face beaming. Su Huan's lips twitched, his face bearing a strange, forced expression. Actually, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Just follow me. Seeing Su Huan go up, the others had no choice but to follow. Kizil Oba, who was splicing steel plates, tugged at his slightly tight collar and whispered, "Sister Yujing, those people are acting strange. I'll go check them out." Yujing nodded. Zioba's wheelchair floated up and he boarded the carriage. Inside the carriage, looking at the completely relaxed Su Huan, the brothers couldn't help but admire him. No wonder he was someone who did big things. He remained calm even at a time like this. As they passed the sightseeing carriage, they heard the hiss of a chainsaw cutting through bone. When they saw the workshop before them, which resembled a slaughterhouse, their faces turned pale. Ugh! Su Huan reacted quickly, grabbing the motorcyclist's tie and pulling it up sharply, forcing back the vomit. He didn't want this guy to dirty his carriage. Su Huan smiled and explained to the group, "Don't worry, she's just a pitiful person being coerced." The third brother and the others glanced at Wanzing's pretty face, then at the bits of meat on her gloves and the butcher's disemboweled body on the table, and nervously swallowed. Wanzing looked at them strangely, nodded to Su Huan, and silently went about her business. After walking a few steps, the eldest brother angrily cursed, "To make a girl do this kind of thing, that train conductor is truly despicable. If I see him, I'll shove the barrel of my gun down his ass and give him a good thrashing." Su Huan's smile froze for a moment. He continued leading the group forward into the dining car. Inside were several tables pushed together and a sofa covered with a striking orange cat blanket. A cabinet nearby held canned yellow peaches, the honey-colored glow of the glass jars mingling with the rising steam from the clay pots. Their gazes swept over Yu, who was wearing an apron, and they all simultaneously recalled Su Huan's description. Indeed, so well behaved. The third brother quickly shook off the strange thought and shouted, "Where's the train conductor?" "Who's the train conductor?" Heavy footsteps sounded from the front of the train, and a burly, strong figure walked over carrying a blood-stained shield, frowning as he sized up the group. The third brother and the others immediately raised their guns. The sound of an electric wheelchair came from behind, and the boy's clear black and white eyes held a hint of hostility. They sandwiched the group in the dining car, one in front and one behind. Su Huan seemed oblivious to the tense atmosphere and walked to the front. He slumped unceremoniously on the sofa, letting the setting sun outside the window cast an orange-red glow on his face, like a lazy orange cat on a blanket. Taking the chilled drink Yu handed him, he propped his chin up with one hand, squinted, and casually repeated the third brother's question, "Yeah, who's the train conductor?" Chapter 50, When Ruthless, He Even Squeezes Himself. Outside, there were sounds of people walking and talking, but inside the train, an eerie silence hung in the air. Even if the three brothers were simple-minded, seeing Su Huan sitting there as if he were back home, they knew what was going on. "You've been fooled, third brother. He's the train conductor," the eldest and second brothers shouted from either side, gripping their guns tightly. "Shut up, you two. Don't talk nonsense." "I know that," the third brother roared back angrily, but his eyes were fixed on Su Huan. What kind of look was that? Probably the complex and shocking feeling you get when you discover your brother has cheated on you, passed both his civil service and postgraduate entrance exams, and is being kept by a rich woman, a double success in career and love. Unbelievable, angry at his lack of ambition, resentful, unable to take his place. Seeing the third brother's complex expression, Su Huan felt a rare pang of guilt, worried they might do something impulsive. Two subtle currents of electricity traveled from the metal soles of his shoes, through the metal of the carriage, and into the bodies of the eldest and second brothers. The two men felt a sudden numbness in their hands and feet, and their submachine guns fell to the ground. Su Huan stood up, opened his arms, and adopted a friendly posture, smiling. "I was afraid you'd accidentally discharge your guns while holding them so tightly." The third brother looked at him intently. "So you already had the ability to take us down, why did you still put on an act?" "Of course, it's because he couldn't bear to lose those 3 fire trucks. After all, no matter how capable he was, he couldn't drive 3 vehicles by himself. What if something unexpected happened on the road? He hated unplanned troubles the most." But his voice suddenly turned cold. "You say I'm putting on an act, so you're saying I'm deceiving you?" Nonsense, everything you said is a lie. Su Huan narrowed his eyes. Which thing? You said the train conductor exploited the passengers. Didn't you see it? Did the train conductor exploit the passengers? The third brother choked, sensing something was wrong. The eldest and second eldest brothers chimed in. You also said the train conductor took over the train with 6 or 7 people. Su Huan pointed to Liang Quan behind him, Xiao Ba in his wheelchair, Yu beside him, and finally pointed back to himself, his eyes clear. Add the 2 you've met before, and that makes 6 people, doesn't it? You also said the train conductor stole someone's sweet and adorable little wife. Su Huan glanced at Yu, whose pretty face was slightly flushed, and nodded. She is indeed very sweet, that's right. The third brother stopped the 2 brothers who were about to speak, and said darkly, but you didn't say you were the train conductor, you said the train conductor exploited you. Yes, that's right, when I get ruthless, I even exploit myself. Su Huan said confidently. What a bastard, Yu couldn't help but turn her head away, afraid that she would laugh out loud in this tense situation. The third brother frowned, carefully trying to find loopholes in Su Huan's words, but suddenly realized that as long as he was shameless enough and admitted to all the things he had said to himself before, this statement didn't seem to have any problems. Su Huan said gently, Third brother, let's not worry about that for now. What are we going to do on the train? The eldest brother's eyes widened. Kill the train conductor. Steal the train. Liang Quan couldn't stand it anymore. He lowered his head and pinched the bridge of his nose. This idiot actually thought about stealing the train? He'd be selling him out by Su Huan and he'd still be counting the money for him. And he felt that this scene would be very soon. Su Huan agreed, right. Kill the train conductor, steal the train, but the problem is we've already stolen the train without killing the conductor, so doesn't that count as achieving our goal? He placed his hands on their shoulders, his tone sincere. Third brother, think about it carefully. If the conductor were an outsider, wouldn't we still have to choose someone else to be the conductor if we killed him? Now, without killing the conductor, your fourth brother is already the conductor, so haven't we achieved our goal? Then he looked at the young man beside him and Wang Hai. Is what I said reasonable? Reasonable, reasonable, absolutely reasonable. Wang Hai nodded repeatedly with a fawning smile, his glasses bobbing up and down. Although the situation had subtly changed, the handsome young man remained in charge, as old Wang clearly saw. The third brother's expression was uncertain. Reasonable? Reasonable, my foot. He recognized every word Su Huan said, but every single one sounded wrong. What could he do? Pick up a gun and fight him? Putting aside the fact that he had already told the other party his thoughts, just looking at the other party's amazing ability to fire a gun without lifting a finger, how could he possibly compete? The third brother, unsure of Su Huan's intentions, bluntly said, we brothers aren't very bright. What exactly do you want? Just say it. Su Huan's smile faded, and he said seriously, of course, I'm recruiting you brothers, no, I mean, getting you on board. The 3 brothers exchanged glances, and the eldest and second eldest, as usual, passed the decision to the third brother. What will our status be once we're on board? The third brother asked, staring into Su Huan's eyes. I won't say much, but on board, as long as you work hard with me, you won't go hungry. Su Huan didn't make grand promises, he genuinely wanted to recruit these 3 brothers. Although they were a bit simple-minded, they weren't bad at heart. The third brother didn't look at Su Huan at this moment, but instead observed the expressions of Liang Quan, Xiaoba, and the others. Seeing their calm expressions, he turned to Su Huan, his tone hesitant. So, should I call you boss from now on? Su Huan chuckled, you can still call me fourth brother. What kind of third brother calls fourth brother? Just call me car commander, I'll trust you one more time. You can't lie to us brothers again, the third brother said meaningfully. Su Huan said seriously, we're brothers. Suddenly, Yu's expression changed, and he blurted out, a zombie horde is coming. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Except for Xiao Ba and Liang Quan, who immediately looked at Su Huan, the others were a little confused. Just then, a hurried running sound came from inside the carriage. Yu Jing rushed in, the people on the outer perimeter say a horde of zombies is coming. Su Huan glanced at the young man and Wang Hai, who hadn't had a chance to ask any more questions, and frowned. What's the progress of today's armed train? The 2 hydrogen-powered trains are fully armed and plated with steel. What's the carriage arrangement? Liang Quan said in a muffled voice, The front carriages have been connected in order. There are still 4 hydrogen-powered trains, 2 baggage carriages, and 2 carriages spoiled by zombies that haven't been connected yet. How long will it take to connect them all? 20 minutes. What if we have to abandon the 2 green carriages? 15 minutes. Time was of the essence. Huan pondered for a moment and immediately gave the order, place the 2 green carriages at the end. If there's no time, abandon them. Prioritize connecting the baggage carriages and the hydrogen-powered trains. Understood. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.